All right, we're live. Hey, y'all. Okay, tonight's topic is going to be about how Americans, I think we all have identity issues here, and how biracial people in America are the only ones kind of vilified and shamed for having identity issues. But the more I talk to other communities, and like, oh, what do we all have in common? It's like we all have identity issues, like between the Black Americans dealing with like, oh, if I'm an FBA or if I'm a all these different terms, Hebrew, Native American. I feel like it's all identity crisis. White people deal with identity issues in America. They don't know. That's why the whole cultural appropriation thing, because they don't really have like, their own, but they do. But at the same time, it's like they feel like they don't. So that's the thing. That's like an identity issue because they lost touch with like their European roots, and then African American lost touch with those African roots, and then like people who are Latino, they come over here and lose touch with like their roots from their culture, and they kind of lose their. So it's just an interesting thing. I just want to talk about it. So I want to. Where is Jose at? I want to. This was inspired by Jose, by the stream that we did with him about, do biracials and Latino people have similar concerns, and he was talking about how that they have identity issues because they come over here and they don't really know, so that's something that inspired this. So let's see, I need somebody to come up here and talk with me because I just want to talk to other people about their experiences with this. And yeah, let me, the links right here. Where's Jose at? I need Jose. I really wanted to talk to Jose about this. I think it was because he inspired this for me. Let me go get him. Let me see. Let me see. Hey, Future. Here, come on up here, Future. I want to know, the whole point of the stream is to just know, why are only biracial people shamed for having an identity issues and stuff, when I feel like we all do. And anybody's welcome to come and like, speak on this topic and stuff like that. And how can we as like Americans, feel like we have, should we only identify with our race and build our identity around race? But I don't think that really works too well. But I think it's a part of who we are, of course. But at the same time, it's like, how do we build like that, kind of national identity where we feel like we don't have to be so obsessed with race and build our whole identity around that. So yeah, anybody want to come up and speak about it and have the conversation? Yep. Mhm. Let's see here, what are the comments saying? It was the majority of Anglo-Saxons, but are now only 22%. Most white Americans are Ellis Islanders. I'm assuming by English Islanders referring to Italians, Russians, Hungarians, Germans, Spanish, Austrians who went to New York, Portuguese who were Spanish due to. There you go, Future. Thank God, girl. I'd be lost up here by myself. You see how quiet I was? I was like, I don't even know what to freaking say.
I know people, when you really schedule for somebody to come up, they don't even be coming up.
I
You
swear.
know?
It's all good though. So what you think about this topic? So I want to know, do you feel like people come into America and they lose like their sense of identity here, but then it's like we as like biracial people who are mixed, mulatto, whatever, we get shamed for it so much. Like people come on my page and they're like, "Oh, you guys shouldn't even exist because you're confused about your identity." But I'm like, doesn't that happen to everybody? Like, let's talk about everybody else's identity issues and stuff. Nobody else want to speak about their own identity issues. Like, let's talk about everybody else's tonight because everybody knows about ours. We already know damn well what we be going through with the whole too black for the white people or whatever, the whole trope of too black for the
Right.
white kids. And that's the whole common trope of, our experiences or whatever. But I feel like
Right.
it's something that affects everybody. It's not just us. Like, why are we the only ones sitting here getting shamed and put down for having identity issues? So what do you think about that?
I feel like when people come here from other countries, for example, I feel like they are proud to be American when they first get here, but
Right.
over time they feel like they miss their home country.
Mm-hmm.
So then they turn around and they'll like wave the flags of their country and stuff like that, and they'll be like proud to be, whatever country they're from. But I just noticed that when it's the USA, like biracial was kind of eliminated. Biracial mixed mulatto was kind of eliminated from the census back in the 30s. So I would argue that all of the people who were mixed from then up until now feel a little bit of an identity crisis because I don't think we feel like we fit into African American culture 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say that, between white and African American, it's just like they don't want to upset the status quo. They already have something going. They're already like, oh, no matter how light you are, you can still be black, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's you brought up something so good. Sorry, let you finish. I gotta do better with that. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, but it's okay. It's okay. Because I mean, I just see that's all I see. They just think that like somehow we are, supposed to be happy with this designation that they have given us without thinking about what we feel. So I would argue that mixed people have had an identity issue since they took them off the census and told them that they were part of another group, which most of us, I don't think we feel like we're 100% a part of that group. Even if we like the group, even if we're cool with the group, even if we can hang out with that group, that doesn't mean we feel like we're 100% a part of that group. So that's my opinion on it.
It's a great hi, 18th letter. Hi, Jose. Welcome to my panel.
Hey, Jose,
Good
18th
evening,
letter.
everybody.
Hello,
Thank you for having me.
welcome. But I wanted to speak on what Future said real quick because I do think it boils down to culture. I feel like us as bi we don't have a culture where we could 100% identify with. So that's the issue. So and then when Latino people come over here, there's like they want to keep their culture that they feel like they got to identify with, and versus American culture, where it's like something you can't really really see yourself in or identify with as much. But I don't know. I think I want anti-letters. I want to ask you a question. So honestly, I think that since Black people have created like a true culture here, and I think Black people would have the most strongest identity here in America. But at the same time, it's like we do see a lot of Black Americans have identity issues with like, oh, we're the Hebrews and we're the Moors and we're the FBA is like, that's a good term, I think. With the we're all of these different things. And it's like weird because it's like I think that Black people since they have such a they have a culture here, they wouldn't deal with so much identity issues because I think that that's what it boils down to. People want to feel like they belong to a culture and feel like they. So, what do you think about that?
Can everybody hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Shout out to everybody on the panel. Shout out to you, Magic. Shout out to the person above you, and shout out to my YouTube dad, Jose Negron.
Yay!
Um,
Thank you.
well, like me personally, I think it comes down to the fact that what the lady was saying above me about people migrating here from different countries where they have, their cultures intact. To an extent, that's true. But like it also comes off to the fact, like for instance, we've all run past white people where we'll ask them, "So, what's your ethnic background?" Oh, I'm German, Dutch, and
Mm-hmm.
different things like that. But as time went on, is the longer you are in a country, the longer you're going to absorb that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like you have, even though you have people that are Italian and different things like that, or German descent, at the end of the day, they're just like white Americans as generations goes on. I think
Mm-hmm.
for biracial people to develop that culture, it'll have to be backed up by multi generations of biracial people, where it'll be a culture that'll be created with a biracial community, and a biracial media that's backed with it, magazines, customs, and different things like that. I think most biracial people, that hasn't been created yet because it's still like a new concept, even though biracial people have always been here. The mulatto class of people back in the day was just a people of color that was considered to have more rights than black people at that particular time period until they changed the census and put biracial people in the same category as black culture. I mean, as black people, because I think biracial, whether you want to say biracial or mixed and anything, I think they more black culture adjacent right now than currently having their own culture, you should say.
Yeah, we are for sure. We are more absorbed by black culture and stuff more.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and you're absolutely right about. And me personally, I never understood it. Like I say, I'm new to a lot of this. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but like I said, when I was coming up before you, like I say, I got biracial people in my family. My grandmother was she had the one drop rule mentality, and it was just like we never. I'm one of those people. I never made fun of people being biracial. I never made fun of light skinned people or anything
I
like that.
appreciate it. That's what's
I
up.
just never, that was never in me. I never, because it was always, you had those stereotypes where people like, oh, you dark skinned, you tough, and if you light complected, you soft. That was never the case in my area. Some of the light skinned guys in my area was some of the toughest dudes that you can think of when I was growing up. So that was like never a thing for me. And I never did get on that, get on that train, but yeah, I think, but that just goes to show you too, like with what I was just saying, like if biracial people are more black adjacent when it comes to the culture, I don't understand why it's like more biracials don't push towards the white community or push towards like different concepts of being around them. If the one drop rule should be non-existent or different things like that, it goes to show that black people are not really dictating that situation, and it wasn't us that actually took biracial people off of the census to be put in the black category.
No, it wasn't. No, I don't think it was. That was definitely white people who took us off the. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think that's. I'm gonna speak on that a little bit. I would want to. I want to hear Jose's experiences because this live was inspired by you because you were saying like, what do we have in common? And you were saying how Latinos deal with identity issues when you come over here. It's the same thing with like white people. What you were saying how they like the time goes on and they kind of lose touch with that German and their all of their heritage and roots. So it's like it does
Hey
like
Magic,
it's
hey Magic,
uh-huh
can I say one thing? I just the
yeah.
perfect example of that is New Orleans. I mean, we
Hmm.
all know when you listen to the names, right? New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and
That's
different
French.
things like that. That's French, but
Hmm.
they mostly speak English. And
Yeah, it's gone. It's
The last
yeah.
French newspaper was published in like 1905 in
Hmm.
New Orleans. So it goes to show you
Absolutely.
as time goes on, it's just like people adapt to being in a land where it's multiple customs and multiple cultures, and they end up,
Exactly.
you know.
I like what you said to 18th letter about it is going to take the multi-generationally mixed people to it can't happen overnight. Like we can't just wake up one day and just have a whole culture where we could identify with. It's going to take generations. So it's like we're going to have to we can't just think only biracial, the first generational biracials. We got to think about the we're connected and how we are going to pass along, different cultures and traditions. So we could feel like we could have something that we could identify with. So that's something that, oh, look, is the golden troll. What's up, golden troll? Shout out to the golden troll. Thanks for showing up to my video. But anyways, I do think that that's such an important point because it's like we like to divide these two groups, but it's like no, they have to be one. It can't be. That's why I say mulattoes identifies us because I feel like I remember in the beginning I was doing videos about like MGM versus biracials, how they have totally different experience. Yeah, they do have different experiences, but at the same time, it's like we have to connect these two because it's gonna take the multi-generational people to like build it up. You can't just keep just making biracials, like first generational biracials. We ain't gonna get nowhere. Like we're not gonna be able to. We're gonna have to come together and actually pass it down. But yeah, I would like to speak like Jose. What is your experience with that? Do you feel like when you immigrated here, because you're a second generation, right, Jose?
Actually,
How many?
I'm first generation. I was born and raised here in New York. Um, Actually, this is has to do somewhat with what I was trying to discuss in our stream on Sunday. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because the fact of the matter is, after the first generation, um, the diasporan Latinos, as we like to call them, they begin to lose more and more of their culture. So after like maybe two or
Mm-hmm.
three generations, I mean, basically they know very little regarding the Latino culture. So there are some differences between um, Puerto Ricans that were born and raised in the island compared to Puerto Ricans born and raised here in the mainland. And actually, when you think about it, the experiences of Puerto Ricans that were born and raised in New York is different compared to those who were raised in Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago. We have different experiences, and sometimes it can lead to misunderstanding when we're dealing with our fellow Latinos that were born and raised in their
Mm-hmm.
respective countries.
Do you feel like so when Latinos come over here, they don't feel like they can I really identify with American culture? Because I like what Future said. I feel like that is an experience. It's like when you first come over here, you're like super proud to be American. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah, America. And it's like, but then time goes on. It's like, I don't know. Do you feel like you don't really identify with like American culture? You feel like more identified with Puerto Rican culture, even though you're kind of removed from it a little bit because you're not really, you don't live in Puerto Rico. So do you feel like that? Like you just don't identify with American culture like that?
Actually, what it is, I try to identify with both, but not all of us,
Mm,
but not all mainland Puerto
interesting.
Ricans do that. Okay.
Interesting. Not all of them do that, but I feel like I relate to that. Us, like me being like a first generational biracial, I try to relate to both cultures. So you're like biculture, basically. So that's interesting. So that's something we have in common. Like being bicultural. And that experience. So that's
Um,
interesting.
and actually, on my community tab, already there's been like 23 different comments
Mm,
regarding that stream. Some of them stating that yes, we do have similarities, others disagree. And the whole point of the stream was to have a civil conversation. You know, um, do we actually have similarities? Um, some of us will say no, some of us say yes. But one thing that gets lost in all this is that while there are similarities, we have to recognize the fact that in our respective cultures, there are internal conflicts that it can only be resolved internally. I mean, when you
mm-hmm.
take a look at the biracial and multiracial community, first of all, you have so many different segments. You have the Golden Spear, you have MGMs, you have mulattoes, and you have like, I don't know, countless number of subgroups. So it gets kind of a challenge to try to form a community when you have that many subgroups. I could be wrong, but that's the way
Mm-hmm.
I see it. Dealing with the biracial and multiracial community for the last, say, 7 months.
It is a challenge, definitely. And I want to talk about how
Can I
being
can I
my
can I
experience.
respond
Oh,
to
go ahead.
something you
Yeah, go
said,
ahead. Go
Matthew,
ahead.
a lot? I
Yeah.
just wanted to say one of the reasons why a lot of people, so proud to be American when they first get here because they feel for the American dream thing,
That's what
the
it is.
American dream hoax,
Mm-hmm.
because people that live in this country, that are generations in this country, know that that's kind of a fallacy. Not saying that America doesn't have its perks, not saying that America doesn't have, you know, good things about it, but a lot of people fell for this whole, thing. Oh, it's the American dream. When we get here, it's the land of milk and honey, and we're going to be thriving once we get to America. And a lot of those people that migrated to this country found out that it wasn't when they arrived on the shores of New York, or when they arrived down in Louisiana, or when they arrived in different places and they was living in slums. They was like, this is not what I viewed America at all. Like this wasn't what the postcards and everything told me America was
True.
going to be. And then with the way that the system is set up here, a lot of people, it's one thing to have pride in your culture, but when you have other peoples of different cultures, predominantly other Europeans or Americans of European descent, telling you you're inferior because you speak a different language, and you're inferior because of your culture and different things like that. Then after a while, you have people that try to assimilate, but once they realize they can assimilate, then it leaves a bad taste in their mouth where they start reaching back to their homeland different ways down the line.
Yo, some of them come over here and do amazing. Like, oh, I'm telling you, I've seen it with my own eyes. So, one of my exes, he was from Ecuador. Like, all his family straight from Ecuador, straight from the slums. And they come over here. They got big ass houses, Range Rovers. Like, they really doing it. But yeah, there's a downside to it because I remember like they were saying how they got their own business and everything, but how they said their house got foreclosed on a couple of times, almost like they almost lost their house a couple of times. So yeah, there is a downside. Like it is like the hustle culture, and it is a downside to it. So but yeah, you can come over here and gain a lot of material wealth. So that's something that is definitely that's the American dream, right? Material wealth, basically. So but yeah, I wanted to talk about my experiences real quick about being like biracial and black, white, American biracial, and how like vastly contrasting like these two different cultures are. When it comes to like white American culture, and how like the attitudes towards it is like everybody has to assimilate to this culture. Like when you come over here, you have to speak English, you have to dress like this, you have to talk like this, da 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 da. It's like etc etc. It's like simulation is like the standard. But when it comes to like black culture, it's like very gatekeep. It's like if you like, I get that all the time. Like, oh, if you're biracial, you can't even be part of it. I don't want you to be part of this culture. I don't want you. I mean, I totally understand like the gatekeeping because how black, not like how white people have come in and took from American they took from a black American culture and they didn't credit them and then they hated them at the same time. So I totally understand like the gatekeeping. I think it's like, it's fine. But it's totally like totally different attitudes towards culture. One, it's like you have to assimilate, and then the other is like, no, we're gonna gatekeep and protect. I don't want other outsiders.
I
It's interesting.
I think I disagree. I think I disagree with that a little bit because, in my personal opinion, based off of what I was seeing, I'm not saying that like it's not bigots within the black community or different things like that, but I think more so black Americans have been more accepting within the culture than a lot of other people, and I think that's why a lot of people gravitates because it's not just whites. A lot of people take from black American culture and try to blatantly disrespect them, and
Mm-hmm.
at the same time take from their culture. Like it's like people's culture is for their culture, people's culture is for them, and black culture is for everybody. And it's a lot of people that do that. They take away from black American culture, but then they turn around and kind of look down on black Americans at the same time. I mean, because perfect example is that when you look at a lot of black TV sitcoms and shows that we grew up on, biracial people was always represented in those shows. In my personal opinion, it's
Yeah, they
always
were.
been
They were already faced.
biracial
Like this is
people.
that's the issue though. That's what a lot of people take issue with. Is like, these people
Well,
who
yeah,
are
a lot
not
of
really
people.
truly black are the face of blackness. Like that's what a lot of people take issue in. But I understand that. Yeah.
What?
Hey.
Because I'm gonna
Biracial.
say because I don't know the spaces that you've like been in. Because I can say I haven't been around those type of people. Not those people are not in my circle. People that
I be
look
all
down
over.
on.
I just be all over. I'm nosy on the internet, all over, and everybody, that's me.
So,
I just
but
be
like I
all
say,
over.
I think it's people that we having these conversations online because it's people that's kind of like created this divide. I'm not saying it hasn't been tensions historically in the past, anything like that. When I think about content creators and different things like that for their own personal agenda and to fuel their pockets, they kind of created um, this kind of divide to an extent, or this kind of like vitriol. I'm not saying it hasn't historically been a divide, but this kind of vitriol because a lot of people we know can articulate themselves well. They can't really get past their emotions, so they'll start hurling insults and different things like that.
From my experience, I feel like it's been the complete opposite. When you said, "Oh, black culture is for everybody," and then this culture is for, I feel like it was been the complete opposite. I feel like when it comes to black people, it's like You could be Japanese. Not you could like explore different cultures if you're a black person, but when it comes to black culture, it's like no, this is only for black people. I feel like it's been the opposite from what I've observed. I feel like it's been the total opposite, but that's just my observation. So
Well, I would say this because when you think about hip hop, everybody does hip hop. When you think about our dances, I mean, wasn't it just black people protesting on TikTok about people doing their dances and them not getting credit or recognition and just
exactly.
Right.
copying things? A lot of people take, I mean, uh, a lot of people take, I mean, you look at the history of all of our musical art forms, all of our everything that we've created, it's it's always been taken, and then we let people in. That's why you have a divide. And this is not with biracial people. I'm just saying in general. We let people into our culture, but then
Mhm.
once they use our culture for a stepping stone, then they kind of abandon it and kind of go into a another
Just like Kim
whatever
K.
places
That's what
that they
Kim K
meant to.
did.
Well, we can say Kim K. We can say a lot of people. It's a lot of people that and people you have people that'll get their first start being in Black American films, and then branch off and kind of forget that they ever even did that.
Oh, like
Like
Jim
so.
Carrey. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was on Living
No,
Color.
Jim Carrey always gave he always gave credit though. He always
Okay.
gave credit.
Jim Carrey,
So
cool. I
I
love
got
Jim
to take him
Carrey.
out of that.
It's about credit,
But yeah,
right?
like
Yeah, it's about credit because I do think that I do believe that culture is meant to be shared and we're meant to share culture. But if you're disrespecting the people of the culture and not really like you're just trying to claim something that's yours that you only thought of, when it's like you should give credit to people. People think I'm a copycat. Let's talk about that. That's what the Golden Troll said. Golden Troll was like, "Oh, I steal people's ideas." We all know Golden Goddess was the first one. I give her credit all the time. Like I do give her credit. I know she was the one who inspired me to do this, and I give her credit. I'm not sitting here saying like, "Oh, I did this. I thought of this on my own." Like, no, she definitely inspired me. She don't like me, but I'd still give her credit. Like that's how it is. Like I feel like it's always about showing people credit and who inspired you. Like I feel like that's if people did that and they didn't just disrespect people and they were like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, but I think that that's the issue. Isn't that the issue? Do you feel like people? Because there's so much pushback on people being like, oh, you can't wear these braids, you can't do this, you can't really do anything if you're not
I
black,
think
and it's more about like them not
I
giving
think
them
part
credit. Is that what you think it is? Hold on,
I
go
think
ahead.
I no, I think part of it is that we've always been demonized for something that's been naturally us, and everyone else gets praised for it. This was just like a few years ago when you had a European hairdresser who had models walking the runway in the little bantu knots, and they tried to remix it and call it something else, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is a new style. This has just been invented." That's not having been just invented, sir. Those are bantu knots. People of African descent have been wearing bantu knots in the inner cities and on the continent of Africa for God knows how long. It's even in the name, bantu knots. So like it's like a lot of things and the braids and different things like that where you can't wear that in public spaces or at work, but or you'll get or your hair will be shamed for you wearing it in certain styles, but other people of other groups get praised for it.
Yeah, I agree. So, Jose, I want to talk about. Do you feel like people like take from Puerto Rican culture and they don't give you credit? And they do you feel like that happens? Like, do you feel offended? Like, do you feel like that's something that like the dominant? Like, do you feel like white people who do that to you? Do you feel like that happens in Puerto Rican culture?
Well, the fact of the matter is sometimes, like for example, you have someone like um, Black Skin is amazing, talking about how we hadn't played no role when it came to hip hop. I mean, we did play a role. It's just that
Hmm.
unfortunately, if you listen to individuals like him, you would swear that they did everything. No other minority group played a role in make up this country. No other minority group made a contribution. Okay, and that they were the indigenous people of this country. With all due respect, and I'm not saying it in a disrespectful way, but the community has been here, at least in the eastern portion of the United States, for 400 years. 500 years if you include Latin America. I mean, we have indigenous people like the Apache, the Comanche, the Iroquois that have been here for thousands of years. So
Hmm.
have anyone talking about that they're the original inhabitants of this country and they only been here say 400 or 500 years compared to um, indigenous people that have been here for thousands of years. I'm sorry, that's hyperbole.
Uh-huh. So my next question is, how do we create a culture in America that we all could identify with, that we could all feel like, hey, me, you, Jose, we're Hispanic, you're Black, I'm mulatto, I'm biracial, that we all feel like, hey, we could all identify with like American culture, because I feel like that's what's missing. Like, we're not unified in this America because we don't have a unified culture. It's like, how do we build that? Like, how do you guys think that we could all come together and help build
Well,
that for each other?
well, the one thing we cannot worry about those who do not know, who do not wish to unify with us, okay? But those people, we're just gonna have to let them be. What we need to do is be mindful that while there are similarities within our respective communities, there are differences. Those differences must be understood and respected. And also, we must be mindful of the fact that in our individual communities, there are internal conflicts that can only be resolved within those communities. Like, for example, in the case of the African American community, I could be very sympathetic. Unfortunately, I do not experience what they experience. So any internal issues within the African American community, they're the best ones to try to resolve it.
Facts. Hey, Jorjor, welcome to the stream. How you doing tonight? What's up?
I'm doing wonderfully well. How about everybody else?
I'm good. I'm loving this
Doing
topic. I
pretty
think
good.
it's
Shout out to you, Jorjor. How you been?
Oh, it's been
yes,
absolutely great, man. Yeah, it's nice hearing from you again. I definitely remember you from the other
absolutely,
previous streams. But yeah,
absolutely.
like definitely the question you asked very much prompted my my arrival.
Oh, I'd love to hear your opinion and speak your thoughts. Go ahead.
So it's possible, but it's just not going to really be an easy thing to do because America in itself is already having one wide scale national identity crisis, and there's just so many differences within, like I guess you could say like the same quote unquote race of people. Because like, like with white people, like quote unquote Yankee culture is very different from like the white Southern culture. So that in itself could also spill a divide. But then you also have like all these other little issues going on, such as like religion or the two-party system or liberal or conservative. And those are going to be like the very things that will actually, like push forward a lot of divisive rhetoric, even among people of like the same quote unquote race. Because, like, do you remember in the Discord when I was asking you
Hmm.
about whether like political ideologies or maybe religion is going to probably cause like a divide among us? Because some of us in this space, some of us do lean to the right, some of us are pretty left leaning, some of us are conservative too,
Hmm.
and some of us are even liberal.
That's
I'm
a
moderate.
whole other thing, exactly,
Yes,
because we
I'm a
have
mod.
race, culture,
Exactly.
and politics that are all over the place in America, and we don't really. It's not unified. It's like everybody.
It's not at
It's
all.
crazy.
So
It's
like
crazy. Yeah, that's
so
true.
like kind of like in countries like Ukraine, I mean, like they have like a pretty dominant culture. They tend to be Eastern Orthodox. They tend to be kind of more like ethno-nationalistic too. A lot of those are going to be things that just about the average Ukrainian or Eastern European could actually unite on. But what solid, basic, fundamental principles can Americans unite on? It's not going to be
Freedom.
easy to do. Freedom, yeah, but the thing is that politics is also unfortunately important in just about every system.
Hmm.
But the issue
Exactly.
with politics is that the great Thomas Sowell said politics is the art of making your selfish desires seem like the national interest.
Hmm.
But since
Real.
we are composed of so many different ideas and so many different diversities of thought, how
Hmm.
exactly are we going to ensure that our little selfish political desires are shared among the common citizen,
Mm.
as many people in Ukraine or those Eastern Europeans tend to share? We don't
Let's
have
go.
that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, we don't. And
So
let's go
that's
back
all.
to what the 18th letter was saying. Okay, you talk about the American dream, the system, and how we're all getting fucked over by that system. Every single one of us. Who could afford a house right now? Like housing is crazy. Whether you're biracial, Latino, black, white, it's like we're all getting screwed over by that system. And it's like they try to keep us
Uh,
so divided so we don't fix it. Like,
can
yeah, go
can
ahead.
I respond?
Yeah,
Can I respond to that
yeah,
real
of course.
quick? The thing is, the problem is, it's too many people that don't really want to change the system. It's too many people that just want to get their piece of the pie and they're comfortable with the system. And that's the
Facts. That's what it is.
issue right there, because no one's willing to make that sacrifice. People don't want to really go against the grain, and America has historically been like that. You get what I'm saying? A lot of people, they just people are at the bottom fighting for crumbs,
Mm-hmm.
while the elites are at the top collecting it, and people just want to be as close to the elite as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Facts.
that's America's history in a nutshell. And that's what it is. And as long as it'll never be any unity, as long as there's people that's fighting for resources and trying
Mm-hmm.
to get theirs, because you have certain people on here that'll sit here and say, I'm for, unifying and everything, but in the back of their minds, they got an agenda just to get what they can get and get the resources that they can get for them and theirs, and everybody else that's in the wind, they're just blowing away.
Yep, you say they take your rights under your nose, say something they don't like, you cancel with having a free speech. Real shit. That's real. That's so true. Yeah, I think that
The perfect
that's a good.
example of that, the perfect
Mhm.
example of that, I'm sorry, Magic. The perfect
Go ahead.
example of that, no disrespect to anybody, but the alphabet community. It went from
Hmm.
striving for equality, and I believe I'm a very diplomatic person. I'm a very sound minded person.
Hmm.
So
You are.
I had no problem with people having their rights. I don't have anything against the alphabet community. Anything you want to get married, get married. Like the great Chris Rock joke. If alphabet people want to be married and be miserable like everybody else, then they got that right. But
True.
really, it started going crazy when you started seeing people now. If you're not if you're not interested in being an alphabet person, or you wasn't raised that, now all of a sudden is homophobia, and then now everything is blatantly, it's a message just forced into your psyche based off of the media, and now you all are trying to implement this type of education within our system to try to attack kids' minds who already don't have the mental capacity to really understand anything like that. It was
Hmm.
it was a video
Facts.
of one boy, I mean one young man who had a change, and then he was regretting. He was actually crying on here saying how he can't go back, and he regretted that
Yep.
because he was manipulated at a young age. That's what I'm
Hmm.
saying. People would say that they want equality, and people would say that they for just being accepted, but really they got a hidden agenda to get power, because power corrupts, and
Power corrupts.
it doesn't
Yep.
become about equality
Exactly.
anymore. It only becomes about trying to make sure that I'm dominated. Now
Yep.
they would have you thinking that it's more alphabet people in this country than it actually is. That is
Hmm.
like 60% or something. And that's not the case. They're a very small minority. And of course we saw that with Patrice Cullors, who I think should be arrested in a BLM movement. She made a mockery out of black
Hmm.
people, and she turned around and scammed with, and she mostly did that for the alphabet community. So that goes to show you right there.
Buying up all
Man, you
those
speaking
mansions, man.
facts.
Yeah.
All facts right there. All facts. So that's so true because
And
it comes
bro,
about
like,
power.
yeah, and
Go
also,
ahead.
bro, like, even like left leaning outlets have even become very skeptical about her actions because they're even seeing how, okay, she's not really giving like the global multi-million dollar network a good name at all, because she's buying up mansions only just to host like a birthday party for one of her sons. And it seems as though she's just collecting all the assets for herself for the sake of clout and political gain. Not that she actually really cares about the people that she proclaims to advocate on behalf of, you know?
Absolutely, she should be in
It's about
prison.
power.
She
It's
should,
about
should, should
power.
all of them should be in prison. And if it was up to me, they'll be serving no less than 20 years fair time.
Same.
Mm. I
But
think they're that. Oh, go ahead, Georgia.
no, it's just like I was also going to like respond to kind of like the last point in regards to a possible unification on like the fundamental principle of freedom. Well, I don't even think that people really believe so much in that either, because they will still continue to vote for policies that could possibly revoke your quote unquote freedom. Everybody in probably kind of has like maybe kind of like a little bit of a dictator type of like ideal that they're probably not even aware of. But when you have that, you're not going to really have any freedom.
Mm-hmm. So this
I don't
America
think
though,
that's really a thing.
but yeah, it's true, and it's like this is America. It's like somebody said, okay, because remember we were having a little debate about do black people have power or not, right? Because it's like that's America. It's all these different groups just trying to gain power, right? And remember, we were talking about do black people have power? And I wanted to say, compared to like biracial people, black people have a lot of power. Like compared to us, I'm like very, very powerful compared to us. So that's why it's like, but black people could use your power against us because we're a minority in the black community because that's where we're mostly in. We're mostly so that's something that I wanted. That's kind of where it comes from. Where I'm like, black people do have power because compared to us as
Um,
a community, how we're so small and like barely getting off the ground, it's like compared to us, we do have a lot. You guys, black people do have a lot of
well,
powers.
I'll
Mhm.
speak on that real quick. Me personally, I never really viewed it as that. And I'm still like, because biracial people have always been some of the prominent representatives in the black community. Um, I
Mhm.
wouldn't say. I don't think black people really, because like a lot of black people's actions, in my personal opinion, have been reactionary, and it's mostly due from
Mhm.
being just fed up because a lot of
Mhm.
black people have been told to assimilate, and the
Exactly.
black community, if it had a history of trying to assimilate only to be dogged out and be looked at as less than, and
Mhm.
it's been prevalent all through media. Because let's keep it real, with the history in the United States and between white people and black people, and the history of colonization in general, it's been a lot of people from other groups and people that just want to be on the winning team, and black people don't look like the winning team, so people would
They gonna be
come in
white.
and they're going to try to simulate to be the winning team, and in turns a lot of people try to dog out black people to try to get other people's attention, to say, see, we don't like them either, we're not like them, we're better than them. And that caused a deep seated disdain. And uh okay, I just want to respond to biracial Becky. At this point,
Privilege not
black
afforded to
people have
certain
certain
groups.
privilege. Not, well, that was a
I
privilege that we fought for by racial Becky.
I
We
agree.
fought because at one point we didn't have any privilege. We didn't have any privilege prior to 1965 with anything. So, and I think a lot of people tend to forget that it's only been 40, 50 years outside of civil rights. And a lot of people, in turn, we paid the price for it. Everybody's been assassinated or sent to prison. The school to prison pipelining, redlining, blockbusting, eminent domain, denial of FHA loans, like everything that has the drug, the crack era, the projects, everything that has been done as experimentation towards black people, and black people have gotten fed up and they fought for it, and in the process, even fighting for that, a lot of people died. There's been riots and different things like that. People tend to forget that history very quickly. But yeah, that's all I got to say.
The only powerful
Nicely
is the
stated, though.
power over your people's image and community. See, that's I agree with that because it's like that's the problem because it's like we have all of these different groups trying to dominate other groups when it's like we should just have power and authority over our own selves and our own community instead of having other people in charge of our image in our community and having autonomy over us. It's like that self-sufficiency should be there, but we're all dependent on a system, so there is no self-sufficiency, so we're all just fighting each other just to it's crazy. Yeah. So go ahead, Georgia. What were you saying?
No, just telling him that, yeah, that was nicely stated. But
Mm-hmm.
I was also just going to say is that, like, since you bro, like you mentioned, like the civil rights era and like it being like a good like 50 or 40 years ago, there's just some
Mm-hmm.
times where I just kind of feel as though like just the 1960s civil rights era was just more so of like an era of false excellence. So like the people who may have been advocating for that stuff, they may have fulfilled the vision, but in like their own vision, but I don't think that they've exactly enforce policies that were really beneficial for even the black community, though, because like even prior to like 1965, like, you know, like the whole black family structure was very well intact. But now, like 55 years later, why is it the polar opposite? And I'm thinking, what happened? And all this stuff was during a time where things were very heated and very turbulent, irrespective of things such as like the redlining and along with this, the segregated schools, just things kind of like along those lines.
Mhm.
So a lot of
Mm.
that stuff also runs
I
through
got
my
I
head
got an
too,
answer for
even
that.
though you're totally right about everything else that you've stated.
Mhm.
Yeah, I got an answer for that. What has happened was that, okay, let's look at who was the labor force. The labor force in this country for mostly labor was Black Americans before the Hispanic population grew significantly, because contrary to popular belief, the Hispanic population was quite small before the 1970s, or prior to even the 1980s. We have now a large percentage of Caribbean Latinos and, you know, other Latinos from South America. But that the only thing that represented the Latin community at that particular point was the Boricuas, Puerto Ricans in Northeast New York section, and mostly the Mexicans in the southwestern section, probably, you know, parts of California, Nevada. So black people was primarily the labor force when it came to the automotive industries, the meat packaging plants, and along with white people as well. But what has happened was, when those jobs were shipped overseas, or a lot of things had not became no longer made in the United States, because we know during the Great Migration, most Black Americans left the South because the South had become difficult for opportunity. Of course, with the lynchings and all of this, and Jim Crow and different things like that, they started making their way up north for those automotive jobs to Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, different areas like that, New York. But what has happened was, at the decline of those jobs and lack of jobs and opportunity, and then you turn around and you implement the welfare system, and you implement government assistance, and you have people that has designed, and when you want to talk about feminism, between those mixtures of things, it has created a monster of women thinking that they don't need their men, and really, you know, in certain aspects, even selling out their own men for, you know, the empowerment stage and crumbs from the government, which is why you seen mostly women within the Black community voted 90%, you know, for the Democrats, and then you have, you know, increase of 20% of Black men that's voting conservative now, because this has been a system that has not worked. And then on top of it, with the women being single, it creates a situation of, you know, um emotional young men being raised in these type of households, that creates problems within, you know, general in the community, which in terms of the family structure is bad, because you do have people that are so used to running things on their own, or so used to having a power structure, they don't want to go back to with something that was traditional. So you will have women that purposely pick a mate that's not conducive to running a place, because that woman wants the power in the household, which is due to design on what has been happening since the late 70s, early 80s.
Good answer though. And
Yeah,
then all
that's
of that
that's
stuff
what
also like,
I. Mhm. But that's what I feel like that's the issue. People having more power over your community. Like these people put power. You know, they were had power. Like, hey, if you want this, like, it wasn't your decision. That's the issue. That's what I'm saying. That's why I feel like us is like biracial, mixed people, blah. You know, the million terms we have, whatever. That we want to have power over our own identity. We want to have a power over our own, you know, how we want to represent ourselves. We want to have power, and we want to have power over our own community. But it's so hard because in America, like the whole white supremacy thing, how it's like white people run all of the infrastructure. So it would take for, if you want to have real power and authority over your own community, you would have to build your own infrastructure outside of like white control. So it's like, but how do we? So it's a deep mess. Like we are really all dependent on the white man. Let's be real. So let's be real, because that's why people come over to America so much, because of the infrastructure in place here versus other countries where they don't have that strong, solid infrastructure. So it's like that's something that, you know, we all have to deal with that. We all have to deal with like being dependent on a system. We all have to deal with that, you know. So that's something that we all have to just figure out the best way to adapt, because that's survival of the fittest. It's about adaptation. about how are we going to survive in this system. And so, there's been a lot of failures, a lot of, push, a lot of stumbles on the way, but we still have to figure out, okay, so how are we either going to build our own shit
But
or we're going to adapt to the system. Like
and
those are our
and
two
that's one
options.
thing, and that's one thing I definitely agree with what you were saying, Magic, about we're all dependent on white people because a lot of people online tend to have a notion to just blame black people for everything, and they use that as a cop out to just say, well, you're not willing to believe anything a black person says because you feel that you want to, regurgitate white talking points to feel that you are adjacent more to white people for opportunity. And a lot of people just don't want to be honest about that. So people will create this narrative like, the whole victim mentality argument and different things like that. And a lot of people just really, everybody has their own personal opinions, but in my personal opinion, a lot of people just really don't know what they're talking about. Some people have been watching Fox News or listening to somebody that knows how to articulate themselves in a different context on things, and they adapt that mindset without fully doing the researches or understanding what has happened within the inner cities. Contrary to popular belief, for people that don't know, black people didn't create ghettos. The term ghettos and problems, those was around way before us. So.
That's from the Jewish people. That was like Nazi. The term ghetto comes from the internment camps and stuff they made for the Jewish people. So since they want to act
Something
like
though.
they say, hold on, somebody
It's
trolling you. They said black men, especially black men, love white women and create these. Somebody trolling. Yeah, it is mostly black men that create biracials. That's true. In
Yeah,
America,
and
yeah.
I would say, and here's one thing to this:
Hold on.
80% of black men are with black women first and foremost, and this whole
Yeah,
notion of that.
biracials, 90% of them are just created in single parent homes. So they're just kind of like they're not really created out of marriage. They're just created and then abandoned basically. That's what happens to most like biracial people. Unfortunately, that's very
I
sad.
don't know about that. I don't know about
Yeah,
that.
a lot of them come from. I'll pull up a thing about how like biracial people deal with a lot of poverty because they're mostly come from single parent homes. Like the it's like at a 70. It's at a high rate of the biracial children not really having a father around. So yeah, it's true.
it's
So that's
it's it's
something.
not to say that's the case.
Hi,
So
Anthony.
like with hey Anthony, but yeah, man, it's not to
Sly,
like
I
say
don't
that
marry
Hey, what's up?
it's
women.
the case for like the majority of them
Mhm.
though, but it's just basically your point is that it's just common to see like a lot of like black white mixed race men and women who were
Hmm.
basically born from some lustful encounter,
I
and then
wanted to
that
say
was
something
it.
about that.
Gotcha.
Oh, my bad, my bad. I want to say
Oh, go
something about
ahead,
that
Anthony.
80% thing. What's up, everybody on the panel, people in the chat?
What
The
up?
thing is, we like to say stuff like, okay, well, at an 80% rate, black men are marrying black women, but we have to also take into account how many of those relationships are actually producing black children. Like, for example, like how many children are they having? Because here in Connecticut, when I see black men with Puerto Rican women or with white women, they be having like three, four kids. But when I see black men married to black women, they might have one or two. So that's another thing to take into account. Just because they're married, which is a good thing, that
Mm,
20% that's marrying out, plus the amount of kids they're having, it's like in the future, like
mm.
we're not gonna see a lot of people that are like
That's a good
100% Black
point.
American. I know that.
They
Well, I
creating
would
these
say
biracials at a high
I
rate.
will
Yeah, they're
respond.
creating a
I
lot
will
of them.
respond to
Go
this.
ahead.
Also, one thing that wasn't put in place: it's over 1.2 million biracial children that are being produced by black women who are in fact
Mm-hmm.
single mothers to those
Me.
children. That never has been that's never talked about it as well. All
My mom was a
different.
single mother.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
No,
they
my
were
thing is, I
So
wasn't.
married.
I
like,
wasn't trying to. I wasn't even trying to throw shade at the dudes. What I was just
They,
saying was
they were
talking about
married, but
the
no, no,
numbers.
no. I get you. I was gonna say this as well too. I don't know the situation with a lot of black men that date uh different groups of women, but I will say a lot of the times too, when you see a lot of these people not having children, you got to think about the economic standpoint as well, because it's a lot of people, even it's black people that are getting married within their 30s or even their late 30s because of the economic situation in America. Most black people, we know the economic disparities between us and other groups, and some people just can't even afford it.
No,
You
I
have
get that, but I'm trying to tell you, bro. Like here, I don't know where you live, but here
I'm
it
in
doesn't
Illinois.
matter. Okay, so over here, like it doesn't matter how poor or rich the dude is. I see it every single day. Like dudes will come in with three, four kids. It's like when they get with a woman who's not black, they be having mad kids, and it don't matter what their financial situation is. But like I said, with the other way around, like I talked to some of my boys who are married to black women, they be like, they might have one and be, I'm one and done. Like we heard that phrase, I'm one and done. Like they do not want. It's like they don't want to have children. Like, and it could be economics, but it could also be, I think the dudes that are having multiple kids with the non-black woman, it's like they see more value. It's almost like they see more value in
No,
producing children with those women than they do with black women.
I'm gonna disagree on that. And one thing, I can't speak for those dudes that do, but I do realize like one of the reasons why you do see more interracial relationships is not, in my personal opinion, is not on the men. If you think about the feminism media that has been fueled throughout the 80s and the 90s of all of this anti-black man hate rhetoric within the community, that's really what forced a lot of men to leave. It's not that black men are not attracted to black women. It's not that black men look at uh,
Yeah, but I'm
black
talking about
women as,
producing black children though. Like even when you
yeah,
look at the black
producing,
spaces,
yeah, okay, but
like think about
check
Tariq. He
this.
had four kids with a mixed woman. You got Phil Scott. He has a Mexican woman. They got like three, four kids. When you go into
Mhm.
Pan African spaces, these dudes have like one or two kids, if that. And then it's like some of them don't even have children. I see dudes going to Africa all the time. These guys are single men. It's like they don't even want to have children. Like let's be
It's
honest, bro.
like no. It's not just that they don't want to have children, and you can't really compare a man dating interracially with other men that are dating within their community. The only thing I would say is that, like I said before, I'm not sure of where their standpoint is. Because me personally, I don't have children, but the reason I don't have children is because of not only the situation, I haven't found the right spouse yet. And would you really want to have three, four children in if you're living in a certain environment, or if you're living if your economic finances is not really in correct order? I don't know about if those dudes that are dating other races of women, if they're bums or not. I don't know, because a bum will have multiple children with no matter who it is. But yeah, I don't really know how to speak on that standpoint.
But either way it goes, a lot of biracial children, even black children, a lot of they're born either way. If you're born to a single parent home, like a lot of black children and biracial children deal with, you're going to be growing up in poverty more. That's something that we both struggle with. That's something, a common thing, that a lot of us grow up in poverty. Like, unfortunately, it sucks. And that's something
Who you
that,
talking about?
we
Like
need
mixed
to,
people, biracial people?
biracial people, yeah, a lot of them are born into single parent homes,
Uh,
so most likely they're going to be, born into poverty. And the same thing with, a lot of black children, they're born into like single parent homes and they're born into
I'm gonna be
poverty,
honest.
and
In my
it
experience, it
sucks.
wasn't like that.
That's
The
good.
people that I know that are mulatto or like black and white,
Uh-huh.
they've all pretty much grew up in middle class, even if they
That's good.
were in a single mom. Like I've actually
I
met
think
people
I
that
was
actually have
like,
both parents.
lower upper lower middle, no, upper lower middle, I don't even know how to explain it, but like not I want to say upper lower class. There we go. Upper lower class. That's where I was at. Okay. Yeah, cuz my parents, they were married for like 10 years, and we had a cute little townhouse and everything. I'm out here in Washington state, so it's a nice area. And then I remember I lived in a trailer park for a minute, but it was kind of cute. It wasn't like really like meth heads or nothing crazy, but it was nice,
Mhm.
that and then but my mom and they got divorced when I was 10. So that's another thing about the divorce rate. You know how a lot of interracial marriages, the highest one with the highest success rate is between black women and white men, and the one with the lowest success rate is between black men and white women. So it's like that's a whole other topic. So,
Can I actually say something about that, Magic? So,
mm-hmm.
do you remember that movie with Sidney Poitier in it, though, which was
Oh, you look
Guess
who's
Who's
coming to
Coming
dinner.
Together?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
came out exactly the same year as the Lovings won their Supreme Court case in 1967. So,
Mm-hmm.
I actually had like a number of like black cousins who were actually marrying white women during that time. And that was also during a
Mm,
time in which actually black men and white women together, there was no like failure rate like at
really?
all.
That was in like
Yeah,
the
it,
60s, or when was that?
60s, 60s, probably I'd say like
Everybody was staying together in the
even up until like
60s.
the 70s too though. I think probably like around like the mid to the late 70s where now like the war on drugs is now starting to be introduced by
Oof.
like the Nixon administration, and then that started to
Mm-hmm.
be accelerated by like the Reagan administration in 1982, then all of a sudden we now see like a decline in the success rate between marriages involving black men and white women. So like what you see right now is like a very recent phenomenon, but anything I'd say prior to 1975, they were fine. And it's also is
That's
fair to ask the
something.
question again is, hey, what happened?
Yeah, that's something that's taken a hit
That
in
is
all American
that's a
communities.
great
It's
assessment, Jorjor.
marriage.
Very
Marriage
great
is
Exactly.
assessment.
Yeah,
that's
because like
something that's
people
taken a hit.
nowadays make it seem as though it's always been a trend when in fact it's actually a very recent trend in terms
Right.
of this failure
Interesting.
rate between
But we
like
have to
black women
understand,
and white
Jorjor,
women
that
as opposed to black men and
Look
white
at this
women.
love.
And
Who's this
see,
well,
guy
and that's what
marriage
I
in
from?
say,
general has been.
and that's what I say. It's so easy for people to think black men are the villain in every aspect of things when people, make their arguments. But a lot of the times that's not the case. But
No, you're not the villain. No, it's okay.
I
But
don't
I
say
wanted.
that, but
Yeah, I
my
don't
thing
say
is
that.
real
Yeah, go
quick
ahead.
that like my and growing up, like I grew up mainly around black people. So like until I probably got to like 15, then I got to a more diverse area. So most of my boys is black. To be honest, black or Puerto Rican. But my thing is, I'm telling you, out of the men that I've seen either here or when I go up to when I was in Florida, I'm telling you, out of all the men that I like interact with, like I'm telling you, it's usually the black men or the ones who are talking about dating ambiguous women, and they don't even. And I'd be like, I would have conversation with them about it, like, yo, you don't like black women? Oh, my kids, I don't want my kids coming out like that. But when it comes to
Mm,
like these ambiguous women, they're like, yeah, man, I'm trying to get me one of those. I don't know, I just like what I like. And it's like when I
mm,
talk, if I'm talking to dudes at work, like white men or Latino men, they never do that. They're never fetishizing other women and saying, yo, I want that white woman. Like a Latino man, I don't want that. I want that white woman. Or like a,
I,
a
I'll
white
res-
man
I'll
is gonna say,
respond to
I want.
that.
Go ahead, go
I'll
ahead.
respond to that. But one of the reasons too, like I said, we got to take in effects. Growing up, a lot of the times, what do we see also in the media? Because we know images brainwash people into believing a lot of what they see. Usually, anything that was more European features and different things like that was considered the standard of beauty in this country. So a lot of us grew up watching the same television that a lot of the young women grew up watching, who in turns used to say things like, I want me a light skinned boy with green eyes. I want my children to have good hair. Different
I
things
don't
like that. They
really. I
came
don't
from the
know, man.
That's
I
not an
didn't really.
excuse, man, because Asians are
Yeah,
still
cause
marrying
no, that's not.
Asians and
I
Wait,
don't
Mexicans
wait,
feel
and
wait,
like
wait,
Koreans.
wait,
it's
They
wait,
even
see
an
those,
wait,
excuse
wait, wait, wait. Let
because
me
they
let
see
me
I
let
didn't.
those
me
same
explain
images,
something.
bro.
Let me explain something. You have Asians right now. You have Asians right now. They have some of the colorist communities. Also, you have Asians getting what they call a surgery to get Western eyes, to get their eyes so their eyes won't be slanted. Everywhere is affected by color. The Indians, the Hindu Indians, have one of the most colorist communities that you can possibly think of. So to say that that's not an excuse, that's just a fact that has been created. And I'm not saying that's not an excuse with all men, but I'm just saying that do play a factor because, for instance, if you take the divestors online and you take some of these people online that are women, look at the things that they've said, and they've actually regurgitated some of the most
So
heinous
okay,
things that you can
can I
think
ask you
of.
something? 18th letter. Okay, let me ask you something. Remember how we were talking about how you believe that we should go back to segregation? Black people were doing better during segregation and stuff like that. And I was like, it never made logical sense to me why black people were like, oh, if black people are like, oh, black people are doing way better in segregation, but people are like at the same time they're like, oh, we had to integrate for opportunities. So I'm like, which one is it? Were they doing better? Then why would they go to integrate for opportunities? But then I heard somebody say that the civil rights is all about black men wanting to fuck white women. And I was like, oh, it kind of makes sense to me now. Because it's like, oh, because those other reasons didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. I'm like, why would you want to integrate with the
Really?
people who hate you? And then why would you want to go for opportunities when you already were doing better before? But somebody, I don't know if this is true, but it kind of
You
made
know what they
sense to
say?
me.
They say
I
because
was like,
the white man's ice is colder. That's
but
what
yeah,
they
but
say. You know?
somebody said that they were like, oh, the civil rights, because Martin Luther King, how he was cheating on Coretta with a white woman. I was like,
See,
they
that
were
turned
trying
out to
to.
be. See, this is what I'm
Is
saying.
that
When
true?
a lot of people believe anything that they hear, and it's
I don't
easier for
believe it.
people to
It just
believe
kind of makes sense. It
believe
kind
this
of makes
narrative.
sense.
He
Right
never he
on.
never cheated on Coretta with anybody. That was something that was put out by COINTELPRO. And if you
Oh
know anything
damn.
about COINTELPRO, that was created to destroy any type of black organization that was trying to
Damn.
fight for equal rights.
That's
All right.
No,
crazy.
that was not true. And
Hmm.
no,
Hey,
black men did
Rakim, how
not.
you doing?
What's up,
What's
Don?
going on? What's going on, Don? But black people
Not
did not.
much, just maintaining and everything like that. But you want to know something which is creepy? Which
Hold
I
on one
think,
second, Don. Let me just finish
No,
what
go
I was
ahead and
saying real
finish. He
quick,
said
bro.
that's not true. That
Um,
Martin Luther King cheated on Coretta with
no,
white
that
women.
wasn't. That was a rumor that J. Edgar Hoover and the Go and Tell Pro put out to assassinate Dr. King's character. That was
Uh
not.
huh.
That was not accurate at all. And on top of it, no, we was not trying to get integrate with white women. When you look at Loving versus Virginia, they got
That
approved
was the
because
black woman.
it was a black woman, a white man who wanted to be with a black woman. So like all of these fallacies, and no, it was black men that was dying left and right for their equality. So for people to even say that and just see, that's why I say I think we should go to segregation, because for people to make a mockery of everything that a lot of black
It
people have,
was it
black
no
men
it
have fought for,
yeah
I would
it was
love to
more like a
see. I would love to see.
divester topic who said that. It was more from like the
See,
divester,
that's what I'm saying.
who said that.
I would love to see where everybody would be if we was back in 1957. All of these optimistic, all of these, different talking points that people. I would love to see where it would be placed back then, because I know as a black man where I would be, but I would love to see everybody else that have this
So
type of
do you think
mentality and
that
thinking.
wait, okay, I got a question. Do you think that if we went back to segregation and it was just all year round, nothing but black people all day and black media, then black men would not be chasing after like light skinned women, and if there was no media, no nothing, it was just you just were born
I
around all
mean,
around. Do you feel like black men would not be wanting to chase after light skinned women and white women? Do you feel
I
like that
feel
would
if
be
it was more value that was promoted in black women's image more in the beginning, because let's act. Why I don't know why people like to act like it's black men that don't like dark skinned women. That is black men that are not marrying.
They don't,
Uh, that's a
it's
lie, bro. That's a lie. I don't
bro.
know about the
Bro, it's a
brothers.
fact, bro. They
I
don't,
don't know.
bro.
No, bro.
Stop
You've only been
playing,
in
bro.
Connecticut.
Bro, I've been in Florida too.
Listen,
What you
listen.
mean?
Bro.
that's
Those are two
everywhere.
strong Caribbean populations.
Bro,
Like those
it's
two strong
everywhere.
Caribbean
I've been to
Oh
Cali.
my
I've been
god.
all over the country, bro. What are you talking
Hmm.
about? These dudes do
No,
not
when I
like
was in
dark skinned women.
Atlanta, usually guys go for somebody their skin tone or lighter. They don't usually go for somebody who's, that's what my observations as well. It's usually that's kind of just my thing.
And another thing I would say to that as well. Okay, let's take it back for a quick second. Let's go to the 80s, right? In the 80s, who was the most popular? Were dark skinned men the more popular, or was it light complected men? You had Prince, you had the DeBarges, you had all of these different things like that. And a lot of women, even in my high school years, a lot of
It was the
women
image
wanted
thing. They
light
were
skinned men.
promoted. Yeah, they were
They
promoted in
wanted
the
light
media.
skinned men. Right.
So
And what happened?
now,
That let me finish real quick.
go ahead, go
That
ahead.
shifted women's mentality into thinking, oh, I want this attractive light skinned guy. I want the guy with the green eyes and different things like that. I don't want dark skinned men. Now, once that 90s came and that image shift with rap and hip hop and different things like that, now all of a sudden a lot of those women wanted the dark skinned guys. And then you start seeing more images of light skinned women that were promoted in media, whether it be hip hop and different things like that. And now it has been a reverse. But nobody gives guys the benefit of the doubt on that. Everybody just says you just hate this because you're self hating, when people don't even look like, well, what is the things that he's been seeing since a child on what beauty is, or what is the things she's been seeing as a child on what being what they think that's beautiful. Nobody
I
talks
don't
like
know.
that.
You're right. You're right.
But
It
then you're
does
gonna
be
have
a
to keep that same
factor.
energy with Latinos, and you can't, and people can't say, well, Latinos are racist. Well, you're gonna have to say the same thing to them and say, well, they were raised with a certain mindset. So you know what I'm saying? Like you're
Well,
gonna have to keep that same energy for that.
but not everybody is
No,
like
no. I mean, it's one thing to be like, okay, you're attracted to what you're attracted to, and I'm not talking about anything, but I'm not talking about like your dating topics. But when you're talking about like what Noonie Martinez did, that's racist, bro. That's racist. That's not. That has nothing to do
Nah,
with
man,
dating
you gotta
anything. She was
understand how
actually
she
trying
was
to
raised.
take
She was
resources and
raised,
allocate them
that's the
from a certain
media.
sector that was historically black. That's racist. That's
but that's
not.
how she
I'm
was
not
raised,
talking
man.
about your
That's how she.
dating preferences. We know of the history of Latin America. We know of what colonization did to Latin America. It's just certain people are not able to really articulate themselves, or certain people don't really know much. So I don't hold that against people, because people are going to articulate themselves the best way they know how, based off of what they're seeing. I know the history, so I don't really trip on it. If people are like that, that's how they like. I chose to stay away
But
from whoever
yeah,
is
that's
like that,
something that I
and that's
talk
it.
about, representation, how that plays a role. Yeah, I do, it does play a factor, but I don't think everybody is brainwashed by or go after what they see in media. Because, me personally, I like, biracial license. They were not promoted in media in my time whatsoever. Like, I can't think of one that, I can't really think of too many. I mean, nowadays, but I'm talking about like growing up, I didn't really see any like light skinned men being promoted in media. So not everybody, like mostly people are influenced by their environment. It's not really about media because I think media plays a factor, of course, but I think it's more about environment. Because if you're like in an environment with these type of people, they're not being seen on TV, but you're attracted to them, you're gonna go for them. Oh, fuck what the TV say. So it's still, I think it's more about environment, comes of who the proximity of who you're around in your everyday life versus like, because everything on media is just fake. It's just whatever. Like it doesn't brainwash everybody. It doesn't, like, not everybody falls into just chasing after what they see on TV. Like that's just not everybody falls into that trap. So, but yeah, that's something I want to talk about though, like representation,
Yeah,
how it
that's not
does
true
play a
because
factor.
yeah.
Oh wait, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say yeah, that's true because yeah, I'm in Connecticut, but here's the thing: we're so close to New York City, and New York City is a good representation of just the diversity in the U.S. So a lot of people from New York, basically, like our population, pretty much reflects what you see in New York City. So we have people from all over the world. That's what I'm saying. Like my boys are black, but they're black from all over the world. They're Black American, they're Black Caribbean, and I'm telling you, pretty much they have the same mindset when it comes to women. And a lot of these dudes, half of the Puerto Rican women out here have black baby fathers, and there ain't really that much Puerto Rican representation on TV. So you can't say, oh, well, it's because they're watching the
Yep.
TV, and that's why. No, they want these women, and I'm telling you because I see it. These dudes are having 3, 4 kids with these women, and same thing when I went to Florida, dudes is chasing Cuban women, Venezuelan women, whatever they can get their damn hands on. And if they are with a black woman, it's not because they were like, I'm with this woman because she's a beautiful black woman. No, it's just because they just with that woman because they just with that woman. It's not like they made a conscious effort. Like I have to drag people to be interested in black history and black culture.
Mhm.
These dudes do not care. And they honestly look at me sideways like, why you care so much about it? Like you mix, right? So it's like, this is the
And
reality,
like,
bro. Like,
and I'll say, like, with what you were saying, why don't they care? Why wasn't their history taught to them? Why don't they know much about it to be? Because I was taught mines. A lot of people there, if you don't teach a person to have pride in themselves, especially when you talk about Jamaica, or you say all of your friends like are Caribbean, or representation, you over there in Connecticut is close proximity to New York. That is Caribbean capital. Florida is Caribbean capital of the United States. So you have a lot of people that are of mixed race coming, out of these different communities and different things like that. If a person is not taught to appreciate or value certain things, and the media does not reinforce, because I'm not talking
So
about the television, I'm talking about magazines, different things that we all
I
grew
feel
up
like,
reading.
okay,
We only 10 years into YouTube.
only 10 years, but I'm saying, yeah, that's like out the window now. But nobody really watches TV no more. You could pick your own media. Like you could go and pick and only look at dark skinned women all day if you want to, because the media,
Listen,
television doesn't control it anymore. So this new
facts.
generation, like that's not even a factor anymore. So it's like
hold,
you control who you
on one
follow
second.
and all who you subscribe
Um,
to. So you're in control, more in control now versus like the TV having
Yeah,
control over your mind. So
yeah,
about
and
who,
what I
the
was
thing,
saying, Magic. What I was saying,
yeah,
Magic. We're
Mhm.
only 10 years into YouTube,
That's what
14 at
I
the
said.
most.
I
You
said
talk?
now
No,
that.
no. I'm just saying.
actually, I would have
Listen,
to say like maybe let's
2007.
see, I'll say like maybe
so
18 years to be precise.
This whole new
nah,
generation was
because
raised on the
YouTube really
internet.
started. It started coming up around like 2007,
2007.
2008. But
Yeah,
that's one generation
That's a
versus
long time ago.
hundreds
We're
and
in
hundreds of years of
2022.
brainwashing.
No, we're in
Hundreds and hundreds of
2022.
years of
But it takes
brainwashing.
one
And
generation. I'm telling you, it takes one generation to just break the brainwashing. It takes one generation who's in control of their own media, so they don't have to be controlled by the media by telling them this is who's pretty. They are creating their own beauty standards, basically. Like they could choose. Like you could choose who to follow. You could unfollow this person if they don't look like you, or if they don't feel like it takes one generation to break it. So
No,
we're
that's
in
a
that
fact. I
generation
know
right
I
somebody.
get.
now.
I know somebody whose sister literally, she's like Haitian. She literally moved to Japan. Like that was a conscious decision to make, and she's dating Japanese dudes, trying to learn Japanese. There are people making conscious decisions. That's why when I talked to you before about, dudes are choosing to go to Thailand, DR, and Colombia, they're not choosing really to go to Africa to find wives. And you were talking about the money, but I don't really think that's an excuse because people are like, Pan Africans are going there, but they're not just getting wives. Like, you know what I mean? So now you do, like Magic said, you have the opportunity to kind of filter what you watch and you can go get what you want. If people want to filter what they want and filter to Latin America, that's their choice. They're doing that consciously. It's not no well programming. No, man. Like dudes just have a lot
Okay,
of
listen.
self-hate.
So let me ask you a question. With that one lady that you said that's Haitian that decided to go to Japan, is she self hating?
Yeah,
Uh,
she is.
okay, she's self hating. So,
Damn, I don't think
but
that's
I
self
seen,
hate. If you
but
want to
I don't,
No,
be
I
it's
don't
honest.
it's
see,
it's self-hate.
and
I
that's the
know that
thing.
because the one I know, she dates
I
like
don't
these white
condone
guys too.
because I don't condone self hatred or anything. The only thing I can say with that is a lot of black people that have not been taught about their history. It's not reinforced by their parents. They grow up looking at what they're looking and they look at their environment and that's how they adapt their perspective on on certain things. Like
Environment
for
places.
instance,
Hmm.
white men that date black women, are they self hating? Because it seems like a lot of the times they get praise versus
Some of them are. I
um
know people who actually have kids by black women, and they everyone called like, oh, this dude want to be black. Like they talk like black people, they dress like black people. So some of them
They
no
hate
actually
no
do.
people
no
for
I
I'm
even
that.
not
talk.
talking
I
I'm
even
not
met a
talking
white dude
about the
that said,
wiggers.
okay.
They
I'm
self
not talking
hating. Them
about them.
wiggers. They
Like
self
Okay.
hating. Let's be real.
I'm talking
They
about the
self hating
upstand. Like for
too.
instance, let's take Robert De Niro for example. Is Robert De Niro self hating
Not
because
everybody
he's only
interracial date is self hating.
dated black women?
That can't
Okay,
be.
not everybody is self-hating. The
Yeah.
person I know specifically is self-hating in my opinion, because I know who they are, so I know what kind of person they are. But I would say, yeah, not everybody is self-hating. I'll correct that.
All right, nah, but this is one thing that I've actually seen with the narrative, not to expound on the point, but I've seen like, for example, like you have certain people that they perceive you to be a certain way, right? So,
Hmm.
for example, I get looks and stares when me and my wife we actually walk, and sometimes I could catch hate from either the Latinos or black people. And since I'm both, and since a regular black person would not think of me as a Latino because of my skin color or so forth, they will actually think that I am a traitor to the black race. When the fact is that me and my wife we actually have the same culture. So
Exactly. It's
with that,
about culture. More people are attracted to people who share the same culture and values, really.
yeah,
That's what it's more
Well,
about
the
that.
difference
They'll
is when a white American goes after like a black woman, the difference is that the white American, in the most cases, the man is in a power position. Same thing even with the woman. So it's not really exactly the same. They have more of a luxury to kind of date who the hell they want. And the thing is, when it comes to somebody who's on the bottom class of society, which is a lot of people say black Americans are on the bottom, it's a little bit different because when you mix into them, their community is not affected by that because we know the drop rule pushes the kids into the black community, and then the black community has to deal with all the colorism and the beefs and all that, and the white community is pretty much unscathed from that. So it's a
so
little
true.
bit different.
True.
I mean, like for example, right? There's this mixed eater guy by the name of Mark Weens, right?
Yeah, I know.
And yeah, so this guy, he he does what he does. I guess he lives in Asia with his Thai wife and son and everything like that. But since he's mixed, he knows that he's mixed, but I guess he actually says that he's part Asian or whatsoever the case may be. But the way that he acts is like he still acts like that. Okay, nothing bothers him. He actually enjoys his own way and everything like that. So I guess that his mindset is like maybe more internationally than other people. So So therefore, whenever he actually travels and eats and everything like that, he's actually like the respectful, and it seems that nothing really bothers him. He seems like a cool dude. I'm saying that's what I see from his videos and such.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. You're right. I think he's half. Yeah, I think he might be half Thai, and then maybe his Wayne's like, was that like a Jewish like name? But
No, it's
uh,
like, okay, he actually said it that he was born like around in the United States. His parents were Christian missionaries. His mom is Chinese American, and his dad is a white American man. And since they were Christian missionaries, he actually was raised like and went to school out there like in Africa, and then he went back to university in the United States. So he's actually a well-traveled guy because his parents were Christian missionaries, and I guess since his grandfather was a chef, that's why he's into a lot of spicy foods.
yeah, I see. I'll be watching his videos sometimes. But I think we talked about this before. Like the mixture between like an Asian culture and a European culture is not like they don't have the same issues that like because look at like Keanu Reeves. Like nobody. I think he could be accepted by white people or Asian people. Or there's another guy. I forgot his name. The Deuce Bigelow dude. And he's actually half
Just Bigelow.
Filipino and half white.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
now,
forgot his name, but
Rob Schneider.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
Rob
yeah.
Schneider? No way. Hold
yeah,
on.
Rob
He's
Schneider is
Filipino?
actually Jewish and
I
I
thought
heard he's half
Jewish.
Filipino.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Filipino.
No
Yeah, he's
way.
Filipino.
Hold
Yeah.
up.
So the thing
Let me
is,
find
though,
out.
it's like if
Let
you
me
if
find
you
out.
actually look at him, nobody would actually know where he's at if he was Asian or anything like that. He could like from his exotic looks, he could pass for an Indian or maybe a Hispanic or something like that. But it's like nobody would really know what he is unless you were actually ask him. So he could actually play both roles as a Jew or
He is
somebody who's from
Asian.
Asia.
Oh my God, he
Yeah,
is
yeah, that's true.
Filipino.
I knew that
Wow.
because he played that
That's
role in he
crazy.
played that role in 50 First Dates, right? And he's like this Hawaiian dude, right? And I was, or I guess perceived to be
I
Hawaiian. So I was
see
like,
it
that's kind
now.
of, I'm like, that's kind of offensive. But then I was like, my brother's like, no, he's actually half like Asian, which is not the
I
exact
see
same, but it's
it.
from the islands or whatever. Yeah, you can
I
see it
see it.
once
I
you know.
totally see it. Wow, I totally see it now. I see a picture with his mom. Hold on, I'm gonna show y'all. Hold up. Hold up. Y'all gotta see this. Y'all gotta see this. I'm shook. Hold on. Let me present my screen. I'm gonna share my screen. Hold on. Y'all, how come I didn't see it till now? That's so crazy. Look at this man. He is totally look at him and his mom. Aww. They look just
Yeah, you
alike.
can see it. You can see it.
That's crazy. You never
And just for the
know.
record,
He
like if the
everywhere.
dude, if the 18th letter dude, I don't be trying to like just for him. I don't be trying to go in on him. But my thing is, yo, like dudes be making so much excuses, yo. Like, come on,
It's the
yo.
same. Yeah,
I'm telling
yeah.
you,
I
like,
feel like all
it's
can be
like,
debunked. I mean, it's the same stuff at this point. Like I know the
yeah,
centuries
like,
of brainwashing thing, but it's like it
yeah,
takes
we
one
can.
generation
Everybody's been
to
through that. Everybody,
yeah.
even people in Latin America, they've all been through it. So it's like you can't use that excuse and say, well, even people in Asia, like they have the issue with the eyelid, changing their eyes, and people in the Middle East changing their noses. But it really still doesn't stop them from marrying each other. Like,
Hmm.
so
So
that's not an
yeah,
excuse.
so true. So I'm gonna ask one more. I'm gonna ask some more questions. So how do you feel that the FBA's foundational biracial Americans fit into American culture? Like, do you feel like we have to create our own culture, or do we feel like we should unite American culture so we can be more united, or do we feel like we should just separate and do our own thing like everybody else is doing? Or what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you
We
guys
have
think?
to. Me personally, I honestly feel like we need to stop. It sounds bad me about to say this, but it's just a fact. We got to stop pretending that we're all going to be united. That's never going to happen. I don't think that's
Right?
ever happened in human history anywhere on the planet. People,
People
like
only
humans, are just
unite.
not like that.
Yeah, people only literally unite when there's an enemy to fight. That's it. Only like that's
Exactly.
oh that's it.
It's never
They
gonna
do-
happen. Like, and we're never, and we kind of realize it
for
now,
real.
like us mulattoes, like we're never gonna be accept. We already knew we're not gonna be accepted by white people. We're never gonna be accepted by black people. So I honestly
Mhm.
believe we should form our own community because I honestly think it would actually help the black community because it would
Yeah.
actually push them to be more held accountable. Like if a dude is dating a woman who's mixed, instead of him saying, "Well, she's still black," now it's gonna be like, "No, bruh, you can date her, but she's not black. Like you can do it, but she's not black." You know
She's
what I
not
mean? And
black.
it's like
Yeah,
Yeah, like
I
you can't
agree.
keep doing that because it
I
creates this
agree.
colorism issue in the black community that you
Yep.
see. White people don't have to deal with that, but now black people got to
Mhm.
deal with colorism because the mulattoes were pushed into their community, and
Yes.
now it's a
Yep.
big issue.
Yep.
And we
For
get
real,
zero
for real.
representation. If you really think about it, like mixed people or mulatto people, we get pushed to the black community, but we have zero representation. Like, you know what I
We
mean? Like, we
don't.
don't really
It
have power
you
like
know,
that. Like you
we
said, we
can't
don't
be
have power.
proud to be biracial. We can't be proud of it. It's like you have to be only pick one side, and then we'll kind of, give you your representation. But it's only if you are representing the black community, and that hurts both of us because we don't feel like we could, be proud of who we are and claim both sides without people being offended. And at the same time, we're not really truly black. It's this is my analogy. It's like honey mustard, right? There's honey and there's mustard. When you bring those two together, they're a whole different thing. And you'd be lying to somebody if you're like, here, this is honey, but it's actually honey mustard. Like it's actually a whole new thing because two things came together and created a whole new concoction. So it's just lying to people. We can't sit here and be like,
It
oh,
is.
Holly
It's lying.
Berry,
It's
the
lying.
first black this, the first black Oscar winning. No, she's the first biracial mulatto actress to win that. Like it's all lying. Like it hurts both of our communities. That's what I want people to see. I want
And you
actual
see that
black
Haitian dude that came on my
representation.
channel?
Yeah.
That dude that came on my channel was like, yo, y'all can't separate because y'all gonna be on some superior shit. Like, bro,
Oh
like
God.
you're trying to hold mulattoes hostage because you don't want them to be in a more powerful position. Like, you see what I'm saying? So it's like you're
I
competing
mean,
with us.
but if you actually talk to that Haitian guy, the only reason he says that is because mulattoes and black people in Haiti, they don't get along for some
They don't get
reason.
along. That's why we can have. We're gonna have a different. Like that history is so bitter between like Haiti and like it's sad and it's horrible. But I feel like we're starting over anew at this point because there was not a long history of race mixing in America. We've been here. There was Creoles but it's been illegal for most of American history. So it's like now we're just starting to have like this population boom of
But you
biracial
got to
people.
understand, Magic. Like, if you really
And
think
yeah,
about it, like we've been denied our ability to be a people. You know what I mean? Like that. I
exactly,
don't think people
exactly.
understand
Our
how
identity
how
erased. Mm-hmm.
I don't think people understand
Facts.
how serious that is. Like if they took a mulatto off the census, that basically denied people their own existence. So now in 2022, when a mixed person is being born, they have to grow up with identity issues, depression, stress, and feel like I watched a video the other day with this mixed dude. And it's funny because he's from Connecticut, right? And he's like, oh, he's like, oh, black men are like so like beautiful, and he wasn't really even saying it like LGBT kind of shit, but he was just saying like, and it's like he's like, oh, black men are beautiful, da da da. And I'm like, it's like I felt bad for him because I'm like, it's like he has no pride in himself because he's pushed
No.
to a black people, so he has to compare himself to a black man, and he thinks he can't. He really think he can't measure up, and it's not fair that basically a people have to be like that because they've been pushed into a community by because of racism, right? Like,
I mean, if you actually look at it,
Oh, let me
there
welcome
there
Toenail. Hi,
there's
Toenail.
like two
Breaker.
YouTubers.
what's up, Tony?
One
Hello.
who calls
Hello.
himself Lamont at Large, and the other one and another one by the name of Mulano. I think they're both biracial. I'm just saying because of their features and everything like that. So I think that maybe one day we should invite them to our channel
I would
so
love
they
that.
could share their experiences also.
Hell
I
yeah.
actually know a lot of mulatto people, but it'll be hard to get them on, on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like they're like, "What you
They don't
talking about?" I
care.
don't want to talk
Most
about
people
that.
don't.
Yeah, they don't
Most
care.
people don't give a damn about this. My husband, he's like, I don't give a fuck about these light skin issues. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, that's his attitude towards it. It's like he's
Yeah, but you
very
gotta
black
understand that's kind
identified
of
though.
it's kind of
It is
selfish though because if you
selfish.
think about it, our kids are
Hmm.
gonna have to go through that stuff. Like they're gonna have to come
Exactly.
through and be like, "Oh, I don't feel like I'm black enough," or you know what I mean. And it's like we need to give them an identity. Say, "Yo, you have a community. You don't have to choose a side. You can choose
Exactly.
yourself."
But
You
we're
know what I
a
mean?
lot of
Like
us are very black identified. That's something that we felt like was the right thing to do.
I
Choose.
just watched a
When we pick a
documentary the other
side.
day.
Hmm. Go ahead. You say?
I just
Well,
watched a documentary the other day where like the same documentary, and they were talking about, oh, it's so difficult if I date a white person this, if I date a black person this,
Oh
and
Lord.
none of the people that were being interviewed said anything about dating each other. I was just
Wow.
like, that thought doesn't even come into their head, like
That's
date
what I
each other.
say. It
It's like
never freaking
crazy.
comes. It's not even a thought in our heads. I don't know if that's a media thing, but I feel like I said, I choose media. You could go find like mulatto couples, biracial couples, because when you look up biracial couples, it usually is like international, interracial couple. We can't even really search it up. Like I gotta really look for it. Like I do look for it though. I do find it. but that's something you really got to curate your algorithm towards, like something like you really got to look for it, like go out there and find
Well,
representation of that, you know. Y'all get me out of getting dragged people mulattoes. We'll
well, the
say
one thing,
biracial. We'll say biracial because I know that. But yeah,
The
go
funny
ahead,
thing is, some
Jose.
people
Sorry.
say they don't like mulatto, but I get offended by biracial. I hate that term. But sorry, Jose.
I
Go
know
ahead.
it's tough. It's so tough. It's our struggle.
It,
But go ahead,
it,
Jose.
it, it
Oh,
go,
hi,
go
Jose.
go
Hi.
for it. Yeah, a lot of people don't know the history of the word biracial. It actually, that word first appeared in the mid 1900s. It doesn't have that much history at all, and actually, it appeared in the mid 1900s. From what I recall, it was from some white activist women, whom obviously were that were in interracial mixing, and which also to pushed for the 1967 ruling of Loving versus Virginia. And remember now, there's a majority white people are the one that pushed for interracial dating and marriage. It wasn't black
Hmm.
people; it was white people
White people.
that did that. Um, and yeah, that the majority of the people that do that. So that word biracial started to appear during the feminist movements and so on and so on in the mid 1900s is where it first appeared. So it's practically a very new terminology that came up. Prior to that, what they used to refer to us within the United States was as mixed bloods or yellows or reds or something like that. They used to have color, those particular type of color codes, but definitely by the statistics or the legal or social recognized group was a mulatto. It was mulatto. You like Rosa Parks, um, Rosa Parks, and who else was it? Franklin, um, um, Frederick Douglass. I'm sorry, Frederick Douglass, Rosa Park, and there was somebody else, Booker T. Washington. If you look back in the archives of the U.S. Census, guess what they're in there as? Mulatto.
Exactly,
But,
and I think
but
people who like biracial, from what I'm seeing, a lot of people who are younger and are more like kind of liberal, kind of like socialist. That's what I see. Like they believe in this whole we're all equal and we can all be the same. Because if you're gonna tell me you could like if you want to claim biracial, that's fine. But it's like that does not tell people who you are. Because Keanu Reeves is biracial, and I would be considered biracial. Me and him are nothing alike.
I
We're not the same people. And to act like, well, we're just all biracial. No, we're not all biracial. Like the same thing when people say we're just all black. Like you got the whole FBA ADOS movement because they're saying, look, we're not all black people. We're different groups of black people, and we have to recognize that because we have our different fights, a different history, and it should be respected. And when you just say,
yeah.
well, I'm just biracial, well, that's like I'm saying we're all American, like we're all equal, like we're not all equal. We're not the same. It's not even
I
on a
like.
like me. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Hmm. No, I like mulatto. You go ahead and finish. My bad.
I was just gonna say like me and Naomi Osaka are nothing alike. Like you're not gonna tell me, well, you guys are both biracial. I'm like, that's like
uh,
saying, okay, we're both American. Okay, so what?
I
But
like mulatto because I feel like it's a true like ethnic group. But of course, in America, it was completely destroyed and wiped out and like totally said it was offensive. And so in America, but I feel like mulatto is like a true ethnic group. But when I'm talking like when I'm in the other stream with like nobody Jane, it's like it is more comfortable to say biracial, than it is say mulatto because it is like people do consider it in the Webster's dictionary. It says it antiquated and offensive, so it is kind of like an uncomfortable term in America. But I do like it because I do feel like it's a real ethnic group that's been historically like. But
yeah, and then if you
American.
really break down the technicalities, magic, like technically we're not biracial because technically we're more European than we are African. So like so we're not. If you
Mm,
really want to be technical, we're not. Like
mm. But
most
I
people
do
who are
use
mixed between Black
biracial.
Americans, yeah, that's
Hmm.
fine. Like that's
I
one thing,
use
that's
it.
fine. But when it's coming
Hmm.
down to being specific, like if you're talking about representation, it
Hmm.
has to be specific. It can't just be, well, we're just biracial. We need representation because, like I said, someone who's half Asian or Chinese specifically and white is not the same as someone who's half ADOS FBA and half white. That's completely different.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
and if, for to address the dude in the comments, dude Adonis that keeps trolling me that I blocked, he's like, oh, mulatto's American, I'm American, and mulatto is Spanish, not understanding that Negro comes from Spanish too. It's a big part of a American culture. So like, what are you saying? Like,
Mulatto specific term. I say Afro. What do you feel about Afropean, Anthony?
I don't like it because it reminds me of the Negropean slur that people
Negropean,
use.
the Negropean, or
Yeah,
African, or all that shit. Yeah.
yeah. Well, what I use is one of the one of the older terms that were used, and also to anthropologists had used a term specific towards us, and it was called basically Euro-Afric or
Euro
Eurafrics.
Afric. I like your
Yeah,
Afric. Euro Afric.
Euro-Afric, and that is specific to the T. One of the reasons why I don't adopt the terminology mulatto because that's not my culture. If you notice that every
It
language,
is.
every language in with any associated with an ethnic group has a specific term to that ethnic group. So like
Yeah.
Anglo is our language. It's
Yes.
not African, it's not Zuliology, it's not Moonology, it's not any of that stuff. Anglo is our language. That's what it is. And that's one of the reasons why I favor that using the older anthropological term. It's descriptive. It's telling you exactly what I am, and there's no mix up. There's no mix, and it's not vague or anything. There's no mix up in regards to it. But mulatto itself, like I said, I agree. Some people take it offensive. To me, I grew up around the world. I grew to me when I grew up in the Caribbean. I was used to hearing that word with Spanish people. So it's very common. It's common in Cuba and in certain places. There are certain places that got rid of using that terminology, like the Dominican Republic and also Puerto Rico. They don't use that terminology. But the other places, that in Brazil and in Cuba, they still use those terminologies. They have a bit of a weird description of it now, what it actually means, but they still use those particular terminology. They still use those particular terminologies now. But I rather just stick to something which is closer to the culture that I represent, which is the Anglo culture. There's no.
Hmm.
That's exactly what it is. That's what we are.
We're Anglo.
Yeah, correct. We're Anglo. Regardless of how much you want to fight against it, that's what we are. We're speaking English, right? So we're Anglo,
Yep.
and a lot of the Anglo culture we adopted.
Hmm. So you go with biracial or Euro Afric. Euro Afric.
I go
Euro
with
Afric.
Euro-Afric. If I have to go
Euro
with a
Afric.
general term,
Afric Euro. She said, "Why we
I
put
would
Euro
also to
first?"
use the European term, which is called mixed race.
Hmm.
That they use. It just depends on where I'm at. If I'm in around Spanish people, I would say mulatto. If I'm around English Anglo-speaking people, I say Euro-Afric to be descriptive, or mixed race or mixed race around Europeans who are more accustomed of that terminology. They're more accustomed. In Europe. They're more accustomed to that term mixed race. Um, um, is more socially accepted, and they understand what it means within the culture there.
Yeah, it does feel like it's not really part of our culture in America. It is really not. It's been something that's taken off the census in the 1930s. Like that was a long time ago. So it's something that it's just not really part of American Anglo culture to say mulatto. So that is something that I like it though because it's specific, and but I do use biracial when I talk to like other groups of like when we were on the radical Latino stream. It's like they call us like biracial, multiracial people, and then so do like the white groups and other groups. They usually just
yeah,
call us
I could
biracials.
disagree.
So.
I could disagree on that because I feel like we need to stop acting like stuff is set in stone. Like there's a lot of stuff that
Hmm.
we even use today that comes from Latin America, and our country's probably going to be half Latin anyways in the future. So to say, well, we're Anglo, that doesn't really tell the full story because there's people that come from all over the place that are not Anglo. Like Italian Americans are not Anglo people. Maybe they speak English now, but genetically, culturally, they're not. Then you got the
Oh
French descendants and the
yeah.
Spaniard descendants in
Hmm.
Louisiana. These people are not Anglo. You already have the Louisiana Creole. So even if they lost their language, you can say, well, they're Anglo because they speak the language. But again, like Creole is a part of their culture, so they use the Louis Creole, like the brother, what's his name, Jorjor, right? So it's like to just give it up and say, well, this comes from Spanish, so we have to give it up. It's almost like saying, well, Negro comes from Spanish, so we should forget about that, and that was inappropriate. Like no, like even today, people celebrate Anglo, I guess Americans celebrate what like Cinco de Mayo. We say little phrases like yo, I'm like over here. I know we say yo, I'm Dolo. which is translation to solo, which comes from Spanish. That's become part of American culture that we picked up with our relation to people like in the Puerto Rican community, for example, right? And so what I'm basically just trying to say is we can't just keep acting like our neighbors aren't Spanish speakers. Like the majority of people in the Americas are speaking Latin languages, and Portuguese and Spanish, those are our neighbors. So it's all a part, to me, it's all a part of the culture. This is the Americas at the end of the
The
day.
Americas.
So like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the Americas at the end of the day. We're not the only Americans. Like that's kind of how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you said. I seen your community post about how Italians are part Latinos or Latin, part of the Latin.
You saw that Maria girl came on there. She always coming to my page talking trash. Like, and I was like, I told him, I was like, I'm not trying to say that we're the people Latino. I mean, Italians are like the same Latino as like someone who's a Mexican person. I wasn't saying that. I was like, in its original, truest sense, it's people from Spain, Portugal, France, and Italy mostly. Those are Latino people.
Is Latin.
Yeah, like that's the culture.
What's
But
it
my
say,
thing is this,
Jose?
like, yeah, like Jorjor said, you can identify however you want. I'm not gonna police nobody's identity. Whatever is comfortable for people. I just think it's good to get the conversation started, and hopefully one day we could come up with like a new term. You know what I mean? Like I'm all for that. But I just go with mulatto now because it already was on the federal U.S. Census. A lot of people, and again, our neighbors to the south are coming in. They're familiar with the term, so they're not going to be like, "What's a mulatto?" When half of our country has Latin American ancestry in 20 years, they're not going to say, "Well, what's that term?" They already know the term. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be really easily adoptable. And then if we could switch it to something that's less, I guess, offensive, then of course I'm all for it. But I think this biracial alone is just I never heard the Euro-Afric. It sounds like a cool term. I
like Euro-Afric. I like Euro-Afric.
Yeah, that's a cool term.
Yeah, it was the original term for when the Portuguese first went to the Portuguese came into West Africa, and they basically migrated before the whole transatlantic slavery thing started. Well, there was a Euro-African population, which was European men that came in and basically became part of the communities there. Basically, had children from African, have children from African women that had a Euro-African population that was there. A lot of these people, like Senegal, I know a guy whom is a descendant from there personally from Senegal, from Senegal, who is Senegalese, and I spoke. When you look at him, man, you would think that he was either Egyptian or he was island or Spanish, man. But no, he was from Senegal, and his descendants basically had a history going all the way back to the first mixing of Iberian people, which was of Iberian people with West African women, and
right.
there's a big history on it though.
Okay, let Jose go. Sorry, we were kind of let Jose speak. My bad.
Okay, well, actually, what I was trying to raise, but I was not allowed to do so. If okay, what's a more appropriate term to refer to people who parents are both of different phenotypes, other than biracial, if biracial is considered to be offensive? Because my understanding, I mean, that's how you refer to someone whose parents have two different phenotypes. I mean, because you have biracial, multiracial. So I'm just a little confused at this point. What's more appropriate to say? And I would like Anthony to answer that question.
It's tough. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you said you were asking me what's more like I said, of course it depends. I would say in my experience, like the mixed people that I grew up around, mulatto people, whatever, no, they've never classified themselves as biracial. That's something that I see like on the internet, like this is my experience on the internet being used, but in real life, I would say most of the time people just say they're mixed, or it'll say I'm black and white. They don't really say I'm biracial. So I mean, it's a hard answer. Like to me, it's offensive because it just feels like you're saying I'm not one thing. You're saying I'm two things instead of being one thing of a couple of different things. But you're just saying you're not black, you're not white, you're just two races. And it's like, wait, what? Like, you know what I mean? That's the offensive part about it, because nobody looks
But
at
that's what
somebody
we
who's
are.
Latino. Yeah, but nobody looks at Latinos and say you guys are biracial. They respect that their mix created a new person. They don't say, well,
Hmm.
you're biracial, radical Latino. And matter of fact, I've noticed something too. A lot of Latinos get way more respect than quote unquote biracial mulattoes when we go into different rooms by the pro black community. They don't really get shitted on for their culture. They recognize they're mixed, they're a new people, they get respect. But when it
They
comes to
actually have a
us, we
community. That's yeah. We don't get respect.
yeah,
Well,
we get disrespected.
They have a
well,
community though. That's in the culture. Go ahead, Jose. Sorry.
well. You see the reason why I'm raising the question is not. It's like I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I only been dealing with the mixed community for about 7 months. So I mean, and I know they've been okay. I know they've been there for much longer. It's just that personal on a personal level. I only been dealing with it. So I'm just trying. So I'm just trying to see see who they are and not be offensive. So that's the reason why I would use like terms like biracial or multiracial. Perhaps it's easier just to say mix and just leave it there.
I like, oh, okay, let me say this, okay. I wouldn't be offended. I'm not saying I'll be offended, like, oh, don't call me that. I'll say, okay, whatever. But I'm just saying I'm not gonna call. That's not what I would call myself. And of course, yes, when you know somebody after a while, you're gonna learn how like they like to identify. Like so, like if Magic, for example, says, well, I like to identify as Mulatta, then that's what I'll call her. And if she says, oh, I like biracial, then after learning that after some time, that's what I would refer to her as. So I'm not saying like if you call me that, I'm gonna yell
Um,
at you. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, people
yeah,
have their own. Some people like golden. Some people like biracial. Some people like that's our struggle. Like all of us have all these different terms. We don't really like. We're just now starting trying to form a group identity, and I do use biracial a lot because I do feel like that. Other groups they feel more comfortable calling us that. They feel more comfortable addressing us as that than a mulatto or like Creole or anything else. So I do use that. But amongst
but remember,
ourselves, I do.
Magic, when I was talking to you before about the term, when I was like another problem with biracial, if biracial doesn't get passed down to the next generation, so you're never gonna have a
Yeah.
community if you're just gonna be on biracial, because in your example, like in your life, you're married to a quote unquote biracial, so your kids don't have parents of two different races. You guys are the same race. So you see what I'm saying? So it kind of disconnects you from your kids, because it's like saying, well, you're biracial and they're MGM, and it just creates all of this confusion instead of saying, okay, well, I'm mulatto or Creole or whatever, and they are also mulatto and Creole. You see what I'm saying? Just like someone who's black can say, me and my wife are black and our kids are black, or me and my wife are white, my kids are white. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? There's
Then
no,
Yeah.
it doesn't
then
disconnect you from your children.
um,
then okay. See, then my question would be the following: since you have different sub, okay, I'm gonna say for lack of a better term, subcategories. Since there's so many subcategories, wouldn't it be easier just to refer everyone as mixed, or maybe I'm missing the point.
The point
What are you
is
asking? Anybody?
the point is it's not self-defined. It's just a generic terminology.
Okay.
It's just a generic terminology. Whereas the word, like other words that are out there that were specific from other ethnic groups, which is like, for instance, the Spanish mulatto that we were just finished speaking about, it's specific what it's referring to, someone who is of basically European and African ancestry. However, the problem with the word is this word traditionally only applies to first generation. What happens if someone who is a mulatto and another mulatto get together and then basically have kids, have children? So what are those children? So people will come around and say, not understanding the Spanish language or the terminology of the terminology, well, they're mulatto as well too, but it doesn't make any sense because the word originally and traditionally basically meant of the first generation.
I
Okay.
would
Well,
push back on that. Like I've seen documents in America. Maybe traditionally, I would have to research that. I've seen documents that say that if if you're a mulatto, then your children will be mulatto as well. And even in my own family, my grandmother was classified as mulatto, and her mother was classified also as mulatto. So it's like I've seen documents that would say like basically if the mulatto person has a child, the kid will also be it would follow the kid, the kid to the next generation. But then maybe
I,
after that, it would change. But
I, I
Well,
got a
no,
quick question.
go
I got
for
a
it.
quick question. I just wanted to know. So, okay, like what this happens because it's obvious that it's a lot of biracial people that get with people of other races. I mean, so what happens if you marry a black person as a biracial person and you have children with that black person, or you marry a white person as a biracial person and you have children with that person? Because Eartha Kitt is the prime example.
The
Are
triracial.
her kids even considered? Do they consider themselves biracial? Do her grandchildren, her
Triracial.
grand triracial, but do they identify as that? Because we all know also in the United States phenotype is very big, so her grandkids just look like regular white people. Would they identify in the same community, or would they view themselves as the same thing with like a person that's a quarter European ancestry and three-fourth African American? Do they identify as, and are they even accepted within that community? Or do they just go to where they phenotypically look like? J. Cole, we know who is biracial, but J. Cole identifies more with his black side. And even looking at J. Cole, you wouldn't think he was biracial.
Mm.
I would say this, I know that they're not black or they're not white in both cases, in my opinion. Like I used to believe the opposite. I used to think, okay, if you're a biracial quote unquote person, you marry a black person, that kid is going to be black. But that's not really the case because just like you said with the three-fourths African American, well, what is three-fourths African American? The average African American is 20% European. A lot of African Americans have the admixture, Native American admixture as well. So they're not even 100% African. So meaning if you do have a kid, like I was saying in me and Magic case, if I don't even know her DNA, but I can pretty much guess that we're both more European technically than we are actually African. So us having a kid with another, Black American person on both sides, our kids are still not going to be 70%. If we want to do percentages, 75%, you know, African. They're still not going to be. They'll probably be like maybe 60 something percent.
Yeah, I
So
see what you're saying, but that's just on the technical terms. But here in the United States, like when we see, certain people, what do we see? And it would be like, how do they identify? Because like J. Cole, he just identifies as black, and I don't look at J. Cole as no different. I'm like, hey, that's a brother. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know he was biracial until he said it. Different things like that, where people that's like Drake, you can tell that Drake is biracial, but also we got to talk about it's because it is an internal conflict within the biracial community on who are more white passing biracials, who it's a possibility some may look down on biracials that's not so white passing.
I would say that I think we need to form a community similar, not exactly the same, but similar to like what South Africa is doing. Because you do have people that are classified as colored and they'd have no problem with the term. Even if we look at it as offensive, they're like, look, I'm colored, that's what I am. And they vary in complexions and vary in, blood quantums from either or side. And there doesn't really seem to be an issue. But the problem that I think the problem is when you have people trying to identify with one side over the other, and that's what creates the whole, like I said, the whole colorism issue in the black community. I think is caused by this whole, one drop rule and people feeling like they need to be lumped in with one community, but that's not the case. They're not the exact same person as somebody like me and you have similar ancestry, but we're not the exact same person. And to act like we are, it's not really,
Well, no.
accurate.
Well, here's the thing. The reason why, because even looking at my avatar, right? Because this is me. You can tell that I'm not 100 fully percent African. You get what I'm saying? I have more
Yeah.
of a brown skin complexion, but that doesn't negate the fact that what I'm classified as in the United States. And what happens is when you're talking about, and I come from nothing but black ancestry, and when you're talking about like what happened in South Africa, that classification is there because the Boers of South Africa and the British of South Africa created that classification. Versus here in the United States, where because people tend to follow whatever their government tells them to follow. So, but here it's more of a one drop rule. And not only does colorism exist in the United States because of the fact that everyone is lumped in, it was the fact that we got to keep it real. It was some biracial people that was comfortable being considered biracial as long as they was able to get benefits and perks under white society, which indeed in terms that they look down some not all, and I'm not saying all, but some people look down on black people as being, better. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people are just not being honest about, is that it's a whole lot of people that just want to be considered, closest to the dominant society that they possibly can be. And, a lot of arguments that people come with is like straw man arguments to be able to negate that's really the true agenda.
Okay, I'll address that. If that's true, and I'm not saying it's not true, but if it is, so what? Let's be honest. That's their right to. That's everybody. If somebody's mixed, that's their right to do that. Like if somebody's half
Exactly.
Japanese and half black, and they say, "Look, I want to be more aligned with the Japanese," that's their right. You can't really just police that and say, "Well, they want to be
No,
closer to the white side." That's their right to do that. That's their
no,
part of the
no.
culture.
Okay, that's fine.
They're
That's
half
fine. But
white, yeah.
I agree. I agree. That's fine. And that's okay with me. But I don't see a lot of those issues being addressed in white spaces either. I don't see a lot of people taking action to go over to the white spaces and say, well, we
I
are
do.
half of you all as well. And
I
you
do
all
that. I
should,
just did a stream. I just did a stream with talking
no,
to
no,
But
I'm not.
somebody.
I,
but
I do that.
okay.
So
I didn't see that. I didn't see that, Magic. And I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about a collective effort. That's
talk,
something that
talking about
okay,
we haven't
so
biracial
seen.
people.
Because,
We
like,
are the
yeah,
collective
because
effort. We are. We're
okay,
so
okay, hold
small.
on,
Like
hold on
there's
one
not too
second.
many of us.
So one thing, because I would say is that okay, if that's the thing, especially with a community, because it's going to be white people, you're going to have to get that classification from. It's going to, I mean, make that move because because people can say what they want about black people, but at the end of the day, black people is not stopping anybody from creating their own communities and different things like that. Now, if you want it to be signed into law and different things like that, I mean, you're going to have to plead that case to if you people want to be with that dominant society or so what, because that's what Anthony is saying has been the issue in the past. So like if that's the
It's
case,
not
they
an
will
issue.
have
It's
to.
not an issue because if somebody has a parent that's white and they're like, what are they supposed to do? Oh, I don't want to inherit no money because if I do, the black community is gonna get mad at me. It's like that's their family.
Nah,
So
nah,
it's
nah, nah,
like,
nah, 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 nah. That's not the case. That's not the case. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that instead of just being honest and just say so what, it's a lot of straw man arguments that's made to say something different, and just being
no,
honest
you're
and say
right. You're right.
I,
You're
I
right.
just
I'm just trying
feel
to
I
be
just want to
honest. No,
go
you're right.
I just want to go to that. And let's be clear as well on one thing. When it comes to getting money from some of these families, it's been the white families that's been turning down biracials when it comes to getting inheritance because they feel like, no, you're not definitely not one of us. And you don't deserve that. I've heard stories in certain aspects of that. And that ain't got nothing to do with black American people.
wait,
Well, and
uh,
my own personal. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
okay. First thing I want to ask the gentleman, do you? First question is: have you grown up around white people all your life?
In my childhood, I was around certain white people, but not all my life, no.
Okay, so you haven't grown up all your life around white people. So so pretty much you're not engaged into white culture.
No, my culture is mostly black American.
Okay,
But I
okay, understood and respected. So my question to you is this: I had a reason to asking that question because you made some statements about the white demographics, which is not necessarily true. It could be depending on where you grew up at, but you made also to another comment in regards to the one drop rule. So the one drop rule was something that was a law that was made that came in 1924 under the Racial Integrity Act that defined blackness. It lasted for a couple of decades up till 1967. It was outlawed. It was completely shut down, and everything restarted again
when they hit the year 2000. So my question to you is, who today is following the one drop rule concept?
Mostly Black Americans, because that's something that has been instilled in us, and that's the thing that I try to get people to understand. It's not, when something is outlawed, the psychological effects are not outlawed with it. It still goes down from generations to generations. Slavery was outlawed in 1865, right? But we still dealing with the effects of that. Jim Crow was outlawed after the Civil Rights in 1965. We're still dealing with the effects of that. Crack cocaine is no longer as prevalent as it once was in the 80s and the early 90s, but we're still dealing with the effects of that. That's where brainwashing comes into play. But let's talk about the one drop rule. Why was the one drop rule created? The one drop rule were created in order to make sure that wealth filters through the white community, and the fact that anybody that was either white passing that might have had some Black ancestry does not have access to that wealth, and that wealth stayed within the white community, which is one of the biggest things in the United States. And that really didn't have anything to do with Black Americans. But I will say, due to brainwashing, yes, Black Americans still follow that, because it's not that easy to, especially from generations that lived through that passed that down to their children. It's not that easy to just let go of that mindset. Here I am, I'm an 80s baby, but I was told, we tend to believe everything that our grandparents or our elders tell us. And I went off of that based off of, that's what the elders in my community went off of. But now that I know better, I don't, if a person wants to identify how they identify, I respect their identification.
Okay, which is obviously which is understood, which is respected on. So, which I was going to come to the same conclusion in regards to that, because of due to institutionalization, and which that law actually caused, and the damage it did to the culture in that particular stance, which has the which resulted in the current outlooks that's evolving inside of the culture right now at the moment. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
And I just wanted to say something to the person that you put up that comment, um, uh, uh,
Who
Mulatta.
is it? The
Black
Black?
people are not, yeah, Black people are not nobody's roadblocks. We don't control any government systems to be a roadblock.
It's
For the
more like a
biracial
social.
community,
It's more like a
I guess
social,
so.
trying to
But
shame
see,
people and trying to. It's more like a social type of control type of thing. It's not
I
legally,
don't I don't
but
think
it's more
that's
like a
I don't think
social
that's
thing.
I don't really think that's as powerful, because when you look at other
It's
groups, let's
powerful.
say,
No, it's
okay, let
powerful
me say,
because you guys
let
are
me
more
explain
powerful.
this.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
It's powerful.
let me explain this. I don't see how, because if you're so bent on your own identity, you're not going to care what Black people think, as long as Black people are not able to
We
interfere.
care.
Nobody's pulling you. Nobody's
Biracial people
pulling.
care. They care
Okay,
about what Black
and
people
let me
think.
just say this: what that person said. People see. This is why I say people tend to let people off the hook. It wasn't. It was the other groups that pushed biracial people into being Black. They
Yeah,
push.
it
They
was.
literally push. They literally push you all into being Black. But it's no smoke for them. That's the thing that gets me. It's no smoke for them. It's no smoke
It's
for
not
the
true.
laws and classification
We do
that
touch
they
smoke for it.
created.
We talk about it all the time. We talk about this
And
all the time. Right? We talk about the white one drop rule and how white racist and how we should not go by racist laws, and we totally condemn that they did that all the time. Like we talk about that all the time.
no,
But
no, no. I'm not just saying that. I'm not just saying that. I'm just saying, even in the realms of um,
we yeah, but we totally condemn people who still go by the one drop rule, because like I said on the other stream, it's like the one drop rule is letting white people define what blackness is, and they shouldn't have no say so over what blackness is. Like that makes no sense for white people to define blackness. If black people should be defining blackness for what it is, and so that's why I condemn the one drop rule. It's completely ridiculous and ludicrous, and anybody who still goes by that rule, which like you said, it was mostly African American people, how like the brainwashing, we call it out. We're like, no, this is not right. This was not. It's a social thing. It's like, oh, you biracial. We hear it all the time. We hear it all the time. Biracials, they are black because of the one drop rule. You guys can't have your own identity. You guys can't have your own community because no matter what, you're gonna be black because by Americans one drop rule standard. but it's just a social thing, and it does affect, like, human beings are social creatures, especially being a biracial person. Now, if you feel like
See,
you don't have your own community, you're going to try to go and beg and run to this community for acceptance, because the white community won't accept you. The black community is the
but
only
see,
one to
that's the
accept
key
us.
right there. That's
That's it
that's the
right
key
there.
right there.
The black
See,
community is the only one to
that's
accept us. It's
wait,
true.
what you just said exactly, and that's the thing that
Yes.
gets me, because it's like a lot of people that have vitriol towards black people, but it's almost like they respect the boundaries of white people, and white people are the ones that's pushing and doing racial classifications and pretty much saying that even though you're half of us, we don't accept you and we don't look at you as any connection to us at all, which is
Mhm.
which is kind of crazy. But it seems like since they're the ones with the power,
No,
most
but
people
this is
respect that
why people
versus
started embracing. Why I started embracing being biracial is because I respected
yeah.
black people's boundaries. Black people were the ones starting to gatekeep, be like, no, biracial is not black. And I respected their boundaries. I was like, you're damn right. You're absolutely right. It hurt for a minute because I identified as black for so long. But I respected black people's boundaries when they started saying that. So I was like, okay, you're absolutely right. Let me just embrace who I am. I know I'm different. I embrace it. I respect blackness. I respect that you want to gatekeep. I respect it. I'm cool with it. That's why I'm over here trying to create spaces for us, because they didn't want biracial people in their spaces. They didn't want biracial people in their spaces. They didn't want biracial people being the representative for them. And I respect it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely right. We should have our own representation. We should have our own spaces. We should have our own community, our own voice representing for us, not representing for black people, because black people have wanted to set those boundaries and gatekeep their image and culture and who they are. And I respect it. I respect black people's boundaries very much. So that's why I'm here doing what I'm doing. So yeah.
No, I see what you're saying, and I'm not negating that. Like I say, I don't feel that type of way, but I'm just one person. I can't speak for everybody else, but I've never felt that type of way. I have
That's
literally no animosity or vitriol towards biracial people. I've never had that complex. But
that's good.
what biracial Becky was saying
Excuse me, if I
is,
can.
Hold on,
hold on
somebody
one
go.
second, Jose. I just wanted to finish this last statement. What biracial Becky was saying about uh, black people loving white people's opinion so much. First
Mhm.
off, it's not opinion if it's into law, biracial Becky. That's no longer an opinion. If I have the power to enforce my will, that's not an opinion.
Mhm.
My opinion, if that's the case, white people's opinion is actually law, because they push biracial people, which was half of them outside of the white community, onto the black
Mhm.
community. It was not the other way around. So when people say things like that, no, we don't uphold. It's just mental brainwashing, and it's obvious that a lot of people don't understand the way. If I have a country and I brainwash the
I
people
think it
in
was
order to,
the law was got rid of in like 1967 or something. It was abolished, thank God, in like the 60s. So that's something that it's been abolished for a minute now. So it's like we can let it go by this point. It's been abolished. We can let it go. People just want to use it when it's hi Kevin. I wanted to welcome Kevin. How you doing? I'm gonna close out the stream in a minute. I'll let it go for a little while longer. It's a good conversation. But yeah, I do think that we have to undo it. It takes work to undo programming. You have to address like the programming. You have to become aware of it, and then you have to replace it with something that's going to be beneficial to you. So it does take work. It's not
Um,
something. So yeah,
excuse
but
me.
go ahead, Jose. Go ahead.
One thing that I noticed in the chat, certain people making complete blanket statements regarding different people, and one thing we do have to be mindful. Of course, we do have certain people who look down on others because of who they are, but we
Mm-hmm.
have to be very careful not to paint a big brush on everyone. Like for example,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, you do have some FBA and ADOS that had say some crazy racist stuff against Latinos. Not all of them are like that, and and of course, some people love to talk about how racist Latinos are. Are they racist Latinos? Yes, they are, but the majority are not racist. So I just want to say we need to be a little bit more careful when we make blanket statements. So because that kind of implies that everyone just thinks the same way, and we know that that's not the case.
Yep, yep, yep. All right. Hey, Kevin. How you doing tonight? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, hello. How
Hey,
you guys doing? To you,
yeah,
Mulatta, as the host, and then Jose and Rakim and the other gentleman on the panel.
we're good.
Yeah,
Thanks for
I know you were going for a little bit, and I probably missed some stuff. And
hmm
Rakim already, Rakim, he actually already spoke to it a little bit, but yeah. So I actually was on a panel the other night. It didn't. There was a few biracial folks who showed up, and
hmm
I gave some talking points. It was on a completely different show, and
Was
it
that
was
on
very,
whose
it was
channel were
very
you on?
interesting. Say again.
Whose channel were you on?
Chaotic truth. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Nice.
he's good sometimes. So, but a
hmm
lot of times he's hugely problematic. But this was a kind of an interesting show that night that I came up, and his question was, "Are biracials the new blacks?"
Oh,
And
wow.
that was his question. I was like, "Oh, okay." So I've been having this conversation with you. I've been
Uh-huh.
looking at some, biracial. For whatever reason, biracial stuff is kind of floating across my For You page, either on
Yeah,
TikTok
the
or
algorithm.
yeah. So
hmm
maybe it's because I kind of put some stuff in the like, again, the algorithm, right? So
hmm
all of that being said, I said, so I look at it like this: you guys are probably going to be a different category, but not necessarily new. We're going to have black people, but we're also going to have a new category. And the
hmm
thing is
We
that
are new.
so now the way, okay, you said something that was very interesting. You said for the longest time you identified as black, now biracial, right?
Yes.
Okay, but you don't have a problem if somebody is identifying both as black and biracial. There's not an issue with that, right?
No, not for me personally. I don't identity police. I don't got time. It's
Okay,
exhausting.
yeah, and that's what I was talking about. And again, that was a talking point that I made. I said, so there's people that only that identify as one way, and then there's people that go with biracial and black.
But if I
And
tell the truth, it's about the
mhm,
truth for me. Because you can identify, like, I totally get why people identify more as black if they're more culturally black and they're only around black people all day. But if I tell the truth, be like, hey, if you got two parents of two or more races, or your parents white and the other parents, you technically are black, that's just the truth. And they get offended
okay,
by it. It's like, that's just the truth. But you could definitely identify more with like your black side, your black culture. Like, that's totally fine. Like, I don't feel like, but if somebody just says the truth that, hey, you, genetically speaking, you're a biracial person, and that's just the truth, you know.
so
So
the
I don't
reason I said
take
all
it
of that, and I was
personally.
explaining to the guys, I said, so the there's kind of a shifting definition of blackness, in the 21st century. Because see, 1960 and earlier, so everybody knows that the landmark case was Loving versus Virginia, 1967.
hmm
It was a case to overturn miscegenation laws, right? Everybody
hmm
remembers that, right? Okay,
Yes.
but so before that, and you got to remember, for over 2 centuries, any biracial that was created went automatically to black people because white men denied their children that they produced during enslavement, right?
hmm
Okay, and even after enslavement, you still had 100 plus years of Jim Crow apartheid segregation, which was legalized, and white men were still producing biracial children, out of wedlock and dumping them on black people. That's what they were doing. Okay, so
hmm
that's where that comes from. That's the historic practice. That didn't stop until about the 19. That didn't stop, and white men were doing that hardcore up until about the 1950s, mid 1950s. It didn't slow down until the 1960s around the Black Power movements, right? And then you get the Loving versus Virginia. So that's where that practice comes from because it was white
hmm
society who implemented the one drop rule. They're like, look, we don't want these kids; they're yours. And they had to go somewhere.
Yeah,
And you and
that's true.
and I think you had a video and you talked and Eartha Kitt talked about her story that she didn't really know who her father was. He might have been white. I don't know. So, something happened to
He
where
was like a
she
plantation owner's son that assaulted,
exactly
like
she
he
had a
wanted
hard
the
time being
yeah,
accepted.
yep,
Yeah, she
yep.
had a hard time being accepted. Everybody saw her as black, but she had a hard time being accepted between both communities because there were some issues about who the father was and all this other stuff, and there was a lot of questions about it. All of that being said, that's how that comes up. So that's why you have biracials who trend towards blackness and say, okay, yeah, I'm biracial and black, but because post 1960s, and because there's shifting definitions, and interestingly enough, and I see this with the women more than the men, when somebody who's biracial does something that black people don't like, they're like, nope, you're not black, you're out of the group. That is kind of what they do, right?
That's what a lot exactly. It's like we gotta we're very much othered real fast. real
Yeah.
fast, because that's the shifting definition of. It's not just the women. We're not going to sit here and just blame the women.
Yeah.
It's men do it
You're right.
too. They're the men. So
I don't want to do
yeah.
that. I don't want to do that. I'm gonna hit the men
Okay.
too.
Thank you.
The men
Thank
do
you.
it too. The men do. There are men
Thank
who
you.
do it too. They will say that so and so is not biracial or so and so is not black. But if they're doing something good, then they'll have a tendency they will of course accept it. Now, here's the difference between black men and black women. Black men do that less. That would be the difference.
They do it too in like pro-black spaces, and mostly maybe in more pro-black spaces when it's like all about blackness. And if you feel like
Yeah.
if a biracial person's there, they're not black enough, and they'll other them real fast. But
So you got to remember, think about the 1960s and earlier. People like Thurgood Marshall, Adam Clayton Powell, Leah Horne, Dorothy Dandridge, all of them had to be under the black banner because, again, they had that. They were under that one drop rule that was actually forced on them by white society. That's where all that comes from. So, but today that's not necessarily the issue. Today is more of a choice. People are getting together, and now it's a choice. So that's why you have that shifting definition. But
it's a choice.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But now let me ask you something. I know you're going to close this down, but because remember you guys came up with the 10 light skin commandments.
Oh yeah. A radical Latino.
That's a good thing. Now here's the question I have for you. What is the rule, or what do you guys think you're going to do with the what you think you might be able to do with the biracials who are problematic? Because there are some.
Problematic. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a whole topic for a whole. That is a good. I gotta think about that. Are you talking problematic? You mean like anti-black? Is it? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, they have their own. So look, here's the thing. They have their own identity. I don't know what they got going on, and because here's the thing. I'm seeing somebody. You got the TikTok therapy, right? And then you have when that woman. There was a woman that came up on Chaot's panel. If you want to, you can go back and look at the show, and I'll drop the title in the back chat. You can go back and look at that show. But she was hugely problematic. She was saying everything negative under the sun about black people. Like she said a whole. I wish she actually stayed up and came back on the panel because I wanted to ask her some questions, and I didn't want to talk about it since she wasn't there. The only thing I said was that lady is problematic, and she is, because she said a lot of negative things about black people, dropped a bunch of bombshells, and then just left. And
I think it's best for us to just be neutral and balanced as possible, and not really biased or try to be hateful.
Yeah. Well, she clearly doesn't want to be black.
I think that's bad. I think we got to just stay in the middle. Like, we're not black, we're not white, we're in the middle. You know, we don't want to. Some people, of course, are more biased and want to more be more go towards the white side or more go towards the black. I think it's unhealthy either way because it'll make you reject the other side. So it's like,
she was so anti-black. Now, see, the thing is that it might have been because of some personal attacks that she had when she was growing up, some issues about acceptance, probably, I don't know, from black or white people. But she was talking about, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find me a white man. I'll make my baby's going to be light as possible, and this, that, and third. And she was just talking, and then she went into just insulting black people. Which
you talking about Anna,
and that's fine, and that's how she feels about it. But the thing is that she's not the only one, though. She's not the only one. And my question would be, if you guys are going to be a new group, because you're an additional group, that's fine. You're black, white. You essentially mix of two different races. What would be your rule for? Or have you guys thought about that? Because there's people coming up that still have those.
I think it all comes from hurt and rejection.
It's a level of anti-blackness within their own. I don't know.
Yeah.
Black side.
To me, it comes from hurt.
Hold on a second. We're talking about we are jumping on one. We're staying one-sided here. You were talking about individuals that basically are anti-black or have a projection of an anti-black through an experience. So what about the individuals who are anti-white because of certain experiences that they have? What about that particular side?
I used to be anti-white. It's not good either way. I don't think you should be anti-white or anti-black. I don't think either way it should be accepted. That's what my personal belief. So
yeah, you can't advocate one side and not and not try to address the other part, because
I guess the difference on the white side is that white people actually have the power to punish people. That's somebody I was explaining this to somebody today, and he finally, to some extent agreed, because he was saying, well, black people can be racist. And I was like, explain to me how. black people can be racist. And there are some black people somewhere with some level of power where they can actually discriminate against somebody. They can be insulting and stuff like that. But again, I see racism as actually being able to influence somebody's life. For example, somebody was talking about there was a black person that told some Chinese people to go back to China. I'm like, well, yeah, a black person can say that, but they can't force those people to go back to China. Only white people can have the power to do that. So you insulting somebody and making that statement means nothing.
What
But
about, okay,
let me put it to you this
so
way.
here's an example. So if a
Uh-huh.
biracial person lives in an all black community, everywhere they go, everybody's black, every single job you go to, and these people
Mhm.
happen to hate biracial people and they don't hire them because they don't want no biracial people. That's racism, right? So that can
Yeah.
happen to biracial people. That's a form of power.
Mhm.
That's you blocking them from getting a job because you don't like biracial people. You don't want them at your job. And yeah, that's a form of power. That could happen to biracial people.
Yeah.
We're a minority in the black community. So that's something that could happen to us. It could happen both ways to us. Either way, we go in a white community, they can do
Yeah.
the same shit to. But I don't really feel like it's really common. It's something that I really worry about too much. I think people, I don't think it's nothing really. I'll just go get
Okay.
another
Yeah.
job. But I'm not really worried about it too much. But you know, yeah,
And
it's not something I worry about.
you're probably right in the sense that again, as more and more biracial folks appear, more and more mixed folks appear, then there's going to be less issues associated with it because the numbers are actually going to help. That would be, by the way, that would be unusual for black people to actually be openly anti-black towards somebody who has any level of blackness. I know that does happen.
No, it does
Now they
happen
may
because we got
now what I mean
whiteness.
is
People hate
they
white
might
people.
insult you. They might insult you. They might kind of reject you in some ways. But as far as like really oppressing you and trying to keep you from living your life, that that's probably rare on the black side.
I'm saying if somebody, it's not
I would actually
really.
expect that more from. I would actually expect that more from white people, only because
If
that's
they
what white people
hated
do to
white
black people.
people, so many people hate white people, rightfully so, because we know the history between black and
Yeah,
white people in America, right? And if they're like, oh, if this person's half white, I can't trust them. I
yeah.
don't really want to be around them. Especially if they are. What if I was culturally white too? Oh, you're not. You don't culturally identify as black. That's another extra level that's there. So it's like,
So let me ask you
yeah,
this: there's a guy named Tyler Adams. He's on. So you got the World Cup that's going on right now, right?
yeah.
Okay, so Tyler Adams biracial. He actually said he was asked a question about being on a United States team and how and an Iranian reporter asked him a question about being black because that's what he
Mm-hmm.
said. He said he see the guys as biracial, but he doesn't again people from other countries don't really see it that way. They see you as just black, right? So he asked him about being black and representing the United States. He says, how do you feel about how black people are treated in the United States? And you're on the team and you're representing them and you feel comfortable with it and all this other stuff. So Tyler Adams, part of his response was he's black and biracial. He's biracial, black, raised in a white family. So
Mm-hmm.
he has all of this. He's got to cover it all the way around. And I'm sure they kind of prepared him for that
So
question.
genetically he's biracial. Culturally he's black. No, not even culturally. Hold on.
Culturally,
Or
culturally, he said,
he said
go
he's
ahead.
raised in a white. Hold on, that's a lot.
Yeah, so I don't know if he was adopted. I got to look more into his history, but I don't know if he. I don't know if
But he's viewed as
he has
black
biracial parents, but yeah,
because
none of
he's viewed as how a lot of people say, oh, you should identify how you're viewed. So
yeah.
I don't go for that. I don't think you should let how other people view you. I don't think you should let other people define who you are. I don't really
Well, he
believe in
confirmed
that.
it. He said he's black biracial, so he that's what I'm saying. He's kind of torn the line between both, which is fine, no issue with that. But the thing is that it's yeah, again, people are seeing that and they're asking these questions about it, and as more and more you guys pop up, that's
Yep.
going to be a major question. Because
No such thing as
notice,
some people
okay,
don't
this
believe
guy's
in that.
biracial. This guy's
Well,
biracial, but a reporter from a foreign country asked him about black issues, which
yeah,
he does
black.
identify as black. See what I'm saying? So,
See, that's something. Look, black, biracial, and I don't even honestly at this point. I don't feel comfortable speaking for black issues. I'm like,
say again.
I don't feel comfortable speaking for black issues because black people have said they don't want us speaking for them. Black people have said that. A lot of black people have said that. It's not just a small. It's like a lot
Yeah,
of.
you.
So me, I don't
I
feel
would agree
comfortable
with you.
speaking.
There's quite a few that have probably said that, but
Yeah,
again,
I don't.
I would go to the issue of it's because they have a hard time. Again, they know how white people have used biracials against black people. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the issues. And then on top of that, you actually have,
When have but hold
again,
on? Can you
I would say
give
it's
me an
not
example
Mulatta. I would say
of?
it's not the majority. I would say that there's some people who, again, like that woman who popped up, she was hugely problematic. You can argue that Meghan Markle is problematic in some ways, in the sense that she only identified as biracial, and then when it came time to deal with like black issues, because she was being treated like a black person, she, then she finally started, talking to some extent about it,
Wait,
and she did. And
what does it
people
what does it
question
have to do
how
with
she handled it,
Uh,
huh?
what does it have to do with being treated as a black person? Why
oh,
not being
excuse me.
treated
That's
as
what
a
she
non-white
said.
person?
You see what I'm saying? That's what Meghan Markle said. She said, and literally in the interview, she said, "Oh, I finally, she's identified as biracial the entire time. She went out of her way not to, say she's black. She went out of her way her whole life to say she's biracial. And then in an interview, after she got the treatment that she received from the people in Great Britain, when she went over there and married that dude, or the prince or whatever, then she's like, oh, I finally realized what it's like to be treated like a black woman. That and black women are like, oh, okay,
You should
that's
just keep the same energy. You biracial. You being treated like a biracial person. Period. That's
yeah.
what.
That
That's what you should keep the same
it'd
energy.
probably been better if she had said that, but she shifted it down to, okay, this is how you guys treat black people, not biracials.
But
You gotta
she's
She
remember,
from
should.
a, but
She
she's
should have
from
kept
this
the same
country.
energy.
How else she's going to reply to that? She's from this country. Well, I mean,
well, she went out of her way her entire life to be biracial. Nothing wrong with that. But then when it came time to when she got some real hate, because you remember, first of all, she's a nice looking lady. She's been, she's got kind of special treatment her entire life. She's a celebrity, and then on top of that, but then when she went to a completely different country, then they treated her. They looked at her like, hey, you're not fully white, lady. And then on top of that, see, I think the problem with Meghan Markle was that not only was she biracial, but the other thing is too that she's a foreigner. That's the other issue. She didn't factor that in. She would have been better off saying that versus drilling it down to race. See, and that's where she messed up.
Yeah, the fact that she was divorced and she was 37, it was a lot of factors in it of
Yeah,
why the UK rejected her. But yeah,
yeah,
I agree. But that's something
yeah.
we're not used to doing. We're not used to like claiming our. We need to really keep it.
Um,
I think we should keep the same energy. We're biracial, whether we go through racism, because like I said, that's not just a black experience. Biracial people experience that too. So yeah, go ahead, Jose. I'm gonna close this out soon though. But yeah, it was a good convo. I'm gonna let
Yeah.
everybody, say what they got to say, and then we'll
okay.
close it out.
Okay, the reason why I came up because unfortunately some Latinos they tend to identify with one phenotype, whether it be white or excuse me, or black. But the point is this: we come in different shades, we come in different hues, and I think when everything is said and done, we need to accept everyone as who they are and not trying to dictate who they are or what we think they are. And if we have questions and if we have questions, it's okay to raise those questions so we can have a deeper understanding of who we are, so that way we don't make assumptions.
I agree. I agree. Let me invite. I got one more person. Bulgarian, how you doing? Hello,
Burgundian?
Burgundian. Sorry,
Burgundian.
Burgundian. My bad. How you doing tonight?
Good, I'm just listening. Just curious.
What's up? You say you're
I,
just curious.
Yeah.
You want
let
to
me
ask
ask
a
you.
question or
Can I
something?
ask you a question
Yeah.
about your name? How'd you come up with that?
After the region in southwestern France called Burgundy.
Okay.
So
All right.
so that's where I got the term Burgundian.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
you're on my. I think you're on my. Are you the guy that's like? What's your name? Larping as something.
As is the Duchy of Burgundy.
Yeah, that's you. Oh, okay, you're cool. You're on my channel. Thank you for popping up today.
No
Sorry, I'm about to go
problem.
eat dinner. But yeah, anybody got any last Georgia? Let me see what you had to say because you popped back up here. Do you have any like closing thoughts? I am about to close the stream, but you're welcome back up any other time, Berdungian.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll
So
be quick with
yeah,
it
go ahead.
though. Yeah, I'll be quick though. So yeah, hey Kevin, though it's great seeing you again, man, as usual. How are you tonight?
Hey, Jadro.
So what I'll probably say, like on the previous point that you guys brought up, though, maybe in regards to us being like accepted into like the Black community. So from experience, it's more so that the Black community will happily accept us until we start identifying with our mixedness. And when that starts to come into the equation is when the Black community starts to lose respect. But then again, just me personally, I just identify the way that I do 24/7, 365 days of the year, because there's just a distinction, a difference, and a really unique experience and nuance that comes along with mixed race identity, whether you're biracial, mulatto, whatever you really want to identify as. But I can always see, like, like the points that you like bring up, Kevin. It's just more so is that, yeah, they would be happy to accept me until I start identifying the way that me and Magic do. And then that's just where I guess just the whole relationship starts to disintegrate.
Yeah, I feel more respected in my identity, just claiming who I am, and I'd be around the people who accept that, who love me for who I am, versus like I feel more respected. There's been studies that your self esteem is better when you claim who you are, and you don't have to like, oh, if I can't be something I'm
Yeah,
not. I'm not full Black. Like that's not something I could ever be or ever experience. So I'm not gonna
exactly
sit
though.
here
And
and
as far as like, yeah, and as far as like how like the world views you and everything, whether that's like you're Black or you're white, well, I mean, like we can't really go by how the world really defines us, because I mean, as you guys already know, a lot of the world thinks I'm Hispanic, including a white cop out here who gave me a ticket and put the letter H on my ticket. So should I go out and about and start to proclaim that I'm a
I
part
got
of
white on
Jose's
my ticket
people?
one time. Yo, I was shook. One time a cop pulled me over. He see me, I was white. I was like, what the hell? Who did what? Like I was shook.
Well,
I was
yeah.
like, are you serious?
Well,
Ain't
yeah, like,
nobody. I
people
don't
think
look
I'm
white. I
Hispanic
do
out
not
here
look like.
too.
I
You're
don't
But
feel like
I'm
I
slightly
not
look
going to
white.
go
offended.
about and start calling
I don't feel
myself
like I look
that
white. I can't pass
because
for
of
no
how
damn
like
white.
people around me view me as that.
He probably wasn't looking very close. I mean, a lot, he's just a lot of times they see women and just kind of throw some stuff down there. Hey, so
Yeah,
man, your chat is kind of off the hook there. Where
they're
did these folks
crazy.
come from? I don't. I usually I ignore the chat, but just so you guys know, my wife is Black, so she's Afro Latina, but she's Black, and
Yeah,
so that kind of all that. I don't date
this
Black
guy.
women.
Oh, Black
Married to
Americans wish they
Yeah,
were Brazilian.
and
Oh,
that's
I don't
I
even
don't.
know who this person. That's
Yeah,
the. I've never
I am
seen him
absolutely
before.
not a self hater. If anything, I embrace being I embrace the Blackness.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
that
You
it looks like
everybody.
this guy's a troll though. I don't
yeah,
really care
It's
what
you
just
you
a
got
say.
troll.
really know me. You got to
I'm
really
letting
know
the
me if you
trolls
think I'm a
have a
self hater.
voice
Yeah,
tonight. I'm letting the
that's fine.
trolls speak.
It's just kind of funny.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, all right, yeah. Uh, I'm
But yeah, hmm let me see.
so
But yeah, I do think that that's another thing though. Not everybody who interracially dates is self-hating. Some people just
yeah.
find people that they love in another. It's nothing wrong with that. Like I think that's a beautiful thing. We're products of interracial. It's a beautiful thing. But there is a dark side. There's always a dark side of everything. But there is a dark side of where people do
Well,
want to do it with the
you could
intention of
it's
self-hating.
actually it's
So
becoming easier
yeah.
to actually identify people who have those self-hating tendencies because of the way they behave, the things that they say, and how they act and how they interact with you know Black people. That look, there's nothing wrong
Hmm.
with I've actually seen some lovely interracial couples because I subscribe to their channels. I kind of their stuff pops up. They're very nice people. And it doesn't matter if the man is Black or the woman is white or it's a white woman or a question Black man or question black woman, white man. You can tell when the relationship but you can almost tell when that you can tell generally when it's just two people that met just happen to be of different races and cultures and they link up and they
Hmm.
create families. That when it's organic, there's really nothing wrong with it. It's when the people try to force it and then they go, "Oh yeah," and then they make a huge issue out of
They
it.
can't force nothing.
That would be your
Try to force it.
divest. I don't like to bring them up too much, but that would be your divestors. They're pretty hardcore about how they feel about Black men, and that's fine. If they don't like if you're Black and you don't like Black men, then that's fine. But the part of the problem is they're taking all of that animosity over there to other men. And some of those guys accept it, but the majority of them reject it. So that's really what
Yeah.
their issue is. But at any rate, yeah.
All
But
right,
hey,
guys.
I need to get ready to shut it down. So
Mhm.
I'll go ahead and take off. But thanks for letting me up. I
Have a
just kind
good
of wanted
night.
to
Yeah. Have a
jump
great
that
night,
in.
Kevin. It's good to
You have a
speak to you
great
as
night,
always.
bro.
Okay.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
Toenails.
who are not biracial are actually having the same conversations you guys are having. Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
So you guys,
I'm gonna
you
go
guys,
check
you
out
guys
the
are having,
channel.
you guys are making a dent and having an influence. Okay.
Appreciate it. I'm gonna go check out the channel. You said Chaotic Truth was having a. I'm gonna go check that out. I want
Yeah.
to
Let
see
me.
what they're talking
I'll throw
about.
the title of
Appreciate it.
in the back chat for you, so you can kind of
Yeah, I
look at it.
appreciate it. I'm gonna go look
And,
at it.
and
Yeah.
hopefully and I try to. And I'm not biracial, but I try to be as positive as possible about you guys and let you know, based on conversations we had in the past, what it is that's going on with it. Because even Chaotic was like, okay, all right, did not know. I'm like, and he's, you know
Period.
how he
Yeah.
is. At any rate, take care.
I have a good night. Okay. Anybody else got any like last clothing thoughts or anything before I shut it down? It was fun
No,
tonight.
that's
I ain't
all I
gonna lie.
wanted to say, though. I
It
got
was
everything
fun.
off my chest.
I
Anyone
feel like I
else?
got off topic, but I think it was it was fun to me. So
It was pretty interesting.
it was
But yeah,
fun, yeah.
screw the world in terms of how they view you. You know yourself better than anyone else, and
Period.
you actually have autonomy over your own identity. I'm not going to call myself
Period.
Hispanic, even though a cop put me as that. I'm not doing that. That is not what I am. And no, you should not say that you're white, Magic, just because a
Fuck
cop put
no.
you as W on your ticket.
I mean, no, absolutely not. And
No.
what I learned most, my biggest takeaway from this stream was about how every single group, they just want to have power over their own community and power, autonomy, and that's what we're fighting for right now. Black people have fought for that, have power over their own selves, and so they could move in the world how they want to, and just be without having to worry about other people oppressing them and telling them they can't do this, you can't go here because this is white only. And everybody want to just have the power to just be able to claim who they are and power over the community and self autonomy. So that's something I learned. We're gonna keep pushing for it. And Simpsons yellow ass. But anyways, y'all are funny tonight. Oh my gosh! Shout out to the chat. The chat was going in like y'all were. Y'all had me laughing. I was sitting here busting up laughing like on mute and stuff. But yeah, does anybody else have any like closing thoughts? Y'all are funny.
Yeah, I'm going to leave with this, right? I'm going to leave with this, right? As a person that's traveled around the world, no, they don't see us as black. I'm sorry, the reporter that came up to that individual obviously knew some history, knew he was here, and probably just information that was given to him to approach him with that particular question. But on a social level, being around the world, no one would have any idea what you are or what you're made of or knows what a mixed race person between black and white even looks like. For the most cases, what they would think that most of us are either from the Middle East in most cases, or Spanish or something of the such. So that's my little 2 cents in regards to that, because it's becoming a bit kind of I'm going to be blunt, sickening when I hear people, especially here in this country, say this is how the world. No, 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 no. The United States makes up only 4.2% of the world population. It is not the world. The world, a bigger picture, does not have the same concept, the hideous concept of race as within here, as within this country does. So I just want to I want to break on that, and everyone have a good night.
Very nicely stated, Toenail, and actually
Have a
from
good night.
experience,
Thank
I
you
can
so much.
attest to that.
Angela, you got anything to say before we close out?
As
Go ahead, Jose.
always,
Go ahead.
thank you first of all, thank you for allowing me, to be on the platform. At times it's a bit of a struggle for me to get a point across, but I think when everything is said and done, everyone should be allowed to express who they are as they see fit. And who are we to try to label someone as whatever? I mean, we're all unique individuals. We all should be allowed to express who we are. It doesn't hurt the us, so therefore we have an understanding of things that I never knew before. God makes people, and something for me to take into consideration. So I just want to say thank you very much. Hopefully, I'll see some of you at some point on my platform. I do try to keep it a safe space for everyone to share their point of view.
Yep. Have a good night, Jose. Thank you. Anybody else got any last closing thoughts? 18 Fly, you jump back on here. You got anything to say?
Yeah, I got something to say. I wasn't able to catch towards the end, but I just wanted to cover something that my brother Kevin C said, I think we've made groundwork understanding that what I was just saying earlier. It's just a lot of people like people want to see like it's this war of black people trying to hold on to biracials or if anybody can identify. It's just like socially what you said earlier, like and what I had covered with Anthony Ali, who he said, you know, so what if it comes to certain people that want to be white adjacent? Because the problem is that it's not a lot of people that's having these arguments as far as trying to implement their identity when it goes towards white people. Most of the time I've been in the spaces, it's all I've heard that black people push me out or black people didn't accept me in anything, which I'm not saying incidents like that didn't happen, but biracial people have always been represented in black media. I mean, from magazines, from stars to sitcoms and different things like that. So I just don't
Mhm.
I don't
It caused
understand
a
that
lot of
thinking. I think there's
issues.
a lot
It caused colorism. There's a million
no well
trillion videos
that's
about
not what caused
colorism
colorism,
because of that.
Magic. No,
Mhm.
it's not what caused colorism. That
No,
took
I'm
a
saying
part in it. That played a
it's
part in it, but
colorism
what
though.
caused
So many people think that's colorism. They think they're propped
I
up
don't
because
think
they're
so.
lighter skin. And yeah, it's caused the issue. That's why we need our own representation. So we're not trying to,
Yeah,
cause colorism issues and there's a
no,
solution to that.
don't yeah, and I'm not saying that's not all that caused colorism. Part of what is called colorism existed before that. Colorism existed when people, thought that they had more of an advantage, um, being of a certain, color in society way before, the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, and different things like that. So that's one thing too. It
So
was even societies within,
we're gonna
historical
talk
black
about the Blue Vein
colleges
Society.
that
I
was
want
more
we
mostly
gonna talk
biracial.
about the Blue Vein Society because I feel like it was a needed thing. I feel like it was like because a lot of people think, oh, it's about you feeling like you're better than other people and so you're separate, but I don't think it was. I think there's the other side to it that we're not really seeing because we're not seeing it from like biracial people's perspective, because it's like we're only seeing it from like from outside looking in. You think you're better than them. So I do want to speak about we're gonna do that another day. It's gonna be interesting. I do want to speak about the Blue Vein Society and how like I think they're totally misunderstood a lot, and I do want to speak about that. But yeah, anybody else got any closing thoughts? I'm gonna close this down. It was a fun convo. We'll talk about that another day. 18th letter, okay? I gotta go though. Okay, bye guys.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Bye. Let me leave.